Good afternoon, everyone. I'll call this meeting to order and ask everyone to stand for a moment of silence. Thank you. Please be seated. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest and the nature thereof? Councillor Watton?
I'd just like to disclose for 9.2.1 Cartwright Sports and Rec lease. I am a director on the board.
Thank you. Any others? Seeing none, we'll move on to announcements from council. Councillor Kieserbrink, Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say it was a wonderful event that was held in Blackstock and incredible turnout from the community to contribute to what could be the possibilities for a repaired rec center and all the uses that could be created from that. And I want to thank Director Coleman and all of those who participated in making that event possible.
Yes, it was certainly well attended, and congratulations to the Ward 4 community for their passion. So thank you. And also, are you going to, somebody going to mention about Cartwright Fall Fest? Okay, Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to thank all who participated at the Fall Festival this weekend on Saturday at Cartwright Fields. We had over 800 people in attendance with over 250 classic cars. And we had 13 or 12 chili entries and lots of other stuff, but it was a huge success for us, the best one ever. So thank you if you participated, and if you didn't, please try next time.
It was an excellent event, and congratulations to you and your team of volunteers for an excellent event. Any others? Councillor Guido, I'm surprised that you don't want to tell us about the amazing race. Yes, please go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just waiting for Councillor Brown to flash my picture on the screen. That's why I was trying to avoid eye contact. But I would like to extend our congratulations to the organizers of the first annual Amazing Race. It was to benefit the Oak Ridges Hospice. McMurtry Law here in town put it on, and I have to say the amount of thought that they put into this event was outstanding. For their very first year, you would never know that it was their first year. They had volunteers. It was so well run. I believe there was 23 different challenges that we had to accomplish. It was such a well run event. You may have heard me sing "O Canada" on the corner of Queen and Perry and eat some food that was not necessarily wanted to be eaten, and definitely some people did choose to dress up, and and they did or did not maybe win a prize for that.
Yes, and would you care to tell us how your team dressed and how you managed to win the best dressed team?
We may have dressed up like Kiss. And we won as best dressed. So I won't do the hand signals for KISS because I was getting it wrong throughout the day. So it was a very well run day. Thank you.
Yes, it certainly was, and it was a lot of fun. Everybody was having just a great time at Old Flame afterwards. So congratulations again to the organizers of that, and it's going to a great cause, and it looks like they probably raised a lot of money. Anybody else? Councillor Brown?
Well, I just want to add to that, of course. Councillor Guido's team, she's being too modest. They won, actually. They were the best dressed group. There were 160 entries, which is great for a first year, 40 teams. And I do happen to have on my phone a picture of Councillor Guido as Gene Simmons, sticking her tongue out. So if anybody wants it, I will sell them to you. Anybody here, I'll sell you $5 a shot. I'm just going to keep it on my phone.
Is the money going to the hospice?
Yeah, there's a good idea.
Yeah.
And congratulations, Councillor, on a great effort.
It was wonderful. And any other announcements from council? I would just like to say I was pleased to represent council down at Lakeview Park for the cancer walk, And there was a terrific turnout for that. Our regional chair was there, and we did the ribbon cutting, and it was a very emotional and heartwarming event. And then yesterday afternoon, there was the family free skate at the arena, and afterwards, the Mojacks game. So thank you to, I think it was the Mojacks that actually paid for the family free skate, and that was very well received by the community. Councillor Guido? Yeah?
Just had one more announcement that I thought we should make, seeing as though we are Scugog proud. The previous weekend, members of council faced off against the Uxbridge Council in the Tyler Hanson Street Hockey event. And it goes without saying that Scugog obviously won. 5-2 was the score. And Mayor Barton is supposed to be wearing a Port Perry Predator jersey to both local and regional council. Now, Councillor McDougall was supposed to hand off the jersey. I'm not sure if it's been done yet, but we'll make sure that Mayor Barton does receive that jersey, and we don't believe it unless we see it, so we do want photo proof.
Right. Absolutely. Councillor McDougall?
Thank you. Just for further clarification, I believe it was both at regional council and local council. And
Yes.
the other thing I did want to mention was I was very impressed that you won the ball drop at the beginning of the game.
Well, what can I say? Yes, well, any other questions, any other announcements? Any other announcements from council? Announcements from staff? Oh, well, I guess we took up all the time with council, so thank you very much. Delegations and presentations. I'd like to welcome our regional chair, John Henry, who is no stranger to Scugog Council and Scugog Township. He is here all the time. Come to this table here, please, John. Yes, you are everywhere. You were at the Mojacks game yesterday, or the family skate, and we see you here often, and we do appreciate that. People in Scugog do appreciate seeing you participating and enjoying the events and being a full partner. So thank you. Please go ahead.
So thank you, Your Worship, and it is my absolute pleasure to be here today, and you did have a busy weekend. There was lots going on here in Scugog, and I do want you to know that Mayor Barton was so concerned. He had mentioned to me that he had to wear the jersey. So I'm good with that as well. And yesterday, thank you for being at the lake. 1,500 people or more from all over the region came to do the CIBC Run for the Cure. And it was a sea of pink, and it was amazing, and it was great to have you there. I also want to recognize your CAO, because you may not know this, but well, you do, Your Worship, because you were there.
That's right.
Where he was recognized by the town of Ajax for the great work that he had done while he was there, and they planted a tree on your behalf, and it was great to be there to see that, along with yourself and Mr. Lohr's family, and it is something that was well received and continues to do. And in fact, they named the waterfront trail after the former mayor's father, Bill William Parrish, yesterday. So lots going on in Durham, and I'm excited to be here, to be in front of your council for the first time, and to have staff in the room and the residents behind me. And this is my first address, and I'm actually excited and a little nervous, because I want to make sure I cover everything, and there's so much, so if I miss something, I apologize. And of course, everyone here is aware of what services the region delivers, and in fact, behind me is members of Transit today, so I'm sure you'll hear from them later. But let's just start with a few of our key initiatives. This year, Regional Council is in the process of reviewing the Durham Strategic Plan from 2020 to 2024, and from June to September, we consulted the public through online survey and pop-up events, and staff were up here at the Port Perry Fair, and they've been out and about through the community. And our target is to have that new strategic plan that reflects the residents' input ready by January of 2020. And while the formal consultation period has closed, input is always welcomed at the Ideas Bank on durham.ca/yourvoice. Another major project that is underway is the comprehensive review of the region's official land use plan, and discussion papers on topics like rural land use and urban growth have been released on the Envision Durham website for the public to review. We're also looking forward for input on how our community should look and function in the future, and the intent behind that is to be completed by 2022. And this is challenging because staff are also analyzing and responding to the recent changes by the province, such as revision of development charges regime and the provincial policy statement. And other changes and budget cuts have been announced by the province have caused chaos and uncertainty for municipalities. The cuts to childcare, public health, and the redesign of our healthcare system, which affects paramedic services and long-term care, and raising more questions than answered. Now, just to highlight what the region has done, in our budget this year, we actually hired paramedics and police officers. We actually hired long-term care people. We hired almost 100 people that are leading-edge, front-of-the-line service people to make our region work as effectively and efficiently as possible. And the challenges that are coming down from the province, just to give you an idea of the magnitude, 4% of the region of Durham is over $50 million. And we're working together to meet the needs of our residents within that envelope as we speak today. And I'm very proud of the staff that we have, both not only in the municipalities, but at the regions, at the regional headquarters, who have come together to work through these tough times. The decision to reconsider the route of the Bowmanville GO Rail extension that was confirmed by the EA approval in 2011 has also been very disruptive. For years, our region and local official plans have included urban development around the 4 new stations on the CP route on the north side of the 401. The same route that was documented in provincial land use plans and Metrolinx's regional transportation plan. The route is projected, if it goes onto the north side of the 401, and this is important, 21,000 jobs and 7.8 million square feet of commercial space in Durham. But that is option 1. There are 4 other options, or 3 other options that were now currently being reviewed by Metrolinx. Option number 3 on the CN line south of the 401 with only 2 stations is the cheapest to deliver but produces the least value. It does not help create walkable stations, downtown revitalization, or improve access to the Trent University and Durham College Whitby campus. Option 3 would grow the congestion and access problems of the existing Oshawa station, replacing those problems at its 2 new locations. We continue to press our MPPs and provincial officials on the issue and asking them to put Durham on the right track. It's been a true effort by the region and the mayors and the staff of our municipalities, Oshawa and Clarington, our boards of trade, and the development community. We hope the logic of option 1 will prevail so that we can plan our communities and our transit system with confidence. Now, the great news about transit in Durham is growing. Ridership on the Pulse route is now over 2.2 million riders annually, growing 22% in the last 4 years. And this month, we will submit Durham's application for transit component of the Invest Canada Infrastructure Program, it's referred to as the ICIP, announced back in 2016. This program leverages investment from the federal, 40%, provincial, 33%, and from municipal, 27%. In total, this program would unlock about $238 million for Durham Region Transit DRT projects, like the completion of the Highway No. 2 bus rapid transit in dedicated lanes from Scarborough to Oshawa. In the northern part of Durham Region, we are focused on increasing bus service. This year, in September, Sunday service was added on Route 950. We've also expanded on-demand service to 7 days a week and extended it up to Brock Township. On-demand ridership is up 200%. The World Transit Service Review is underway with customer focus groups scheduled for this month. DRT continues to examine service time points with a view to improving connectivity to key destinations like GO Transit stations and post-secondary campuses. As councillors, we often hear from our citizens about road safety, and last spring we launched Vision Zero, an initiative to reduce road fatalities and injuries by a minimum of 10% over the next 5 years and ultimately to 0 serious collisions. Municipalities, police, and drivers can all play a role in reducing collisions. The ongoing Island Road Safety Review is a great example. Together, the region and the township are planning for signage, markings, and physical changes to make the road safer for all users. In 2019, Durham will invest just over $400 million to build and maintain regional assets and infrastructure, now valued at $14.5 billion. Our 2019 capital program includes $183 million for sanitary sewers, $114 million for water supply, $94.5 million for roads, $5.6 million each in transit and paramedic services. When the region replaces water mains and sewers and culverts, we're now striving to coordinate with area municipalities. These projects are key opportunities to update or build the infrastructure to withstand climate change. The Durham Community Climate Adaptation Plan assessed climate risk at the upper and lower tiers and is a blueprint for responding without duplication or effort through actions like backyard tree planting programming and sizing culverts to prevent flooding. An adaptation plan for the agricultural sector was created as well. The region and area municipalities and our energy utilities also work together to create and adopt the Durham Community Energy Plan. It includes 6 programs to put on low-carbon pathway and transform our economy. And we are currently investigating FCM's funding that could help us start a household energy retrofit program in Durham to reduce emissions and save heating costs. It's great to report the launch of the region's broadband program, beginning with the mapping of our municipal facilities and services coverage, and the study is completed. The region's broadband specialist will be meeting with Scugog officials and stakeholders, I believe, this week. The region is also innovating through partnership and human services to make the difference in people's lives. Last year, we piloted the primary care outreach program in Oshawa Priority Neighborhoods with great results. By teaming up with advanced care paramedics and social workers, we are taking services to the most vulnerable populations, such as those who are struggling with addictions or mental health issues. Our basic healthcare, mental health supports, and referrals to other community service, the team builds trust with those who are most vulnerable. And in 2019, Regional Council made this program permanent and region-wide. Your Worship, I just have a couple more pages. I'm not sure how much time you've allotted.
We allow a little bit more time for presentations, and that's what this is. So.
Well, thank you. An example is the Canada Learning Books Bond Initiative. The region is partnering with public libraries, school boards, municipalities, and banks to help low-income families receive $2,000 per child they are entitled to. Children with educational savings are 3 times more likely to go on to post-secondary school, and receiving the grant provides hope for a better future for our children and spurs additional savings. In November, 8 events, region-wide, families can get and help and apply for the bond and set up an RESP to hold the funds. Another municipal partnership is underway to increase health and safety across the region is the Farm 911 project, which supports accurate emergency response in rural areas. Every fall, we showcase our rural community with the annual Durham Agriculture Advisory Committee Farm Tour. And this year it was hosted in Scugog at Willow Tree Farm, where more than 100 people participated. The event really showed how diverse our farm-based businesses can be. And this month, eager federal election candidates are reaching out to us. The region's priorities for the federal attention were posted on durham.ca and sent to each of the candidates. We need to let them know what our communities need and expect. This presentation only covers a few of our highlights, but members of council and your worship, it is Durham's time. It is absolutely just amazing how we have development in all 8 municipalities. And when I'm asked to explain how Durham region works, I talk about a pie. We are 8 slices that come together to make a perfect pie, and the pie plate is the region. And we work together to make some amazing thing happen. And I am so proud of the work that you're doing, not only here in Scugog, but you can see it across the region with a willingness to go forward and work together as a team to take this region to the next level. And you are doing that. Your Worship, I thank you for the opportunity. I will try to answer as many questions that come forward, but it really is a pleasure for me to be here to give you an update on what's going on at the region.
It's a pleasure to have you here too, Regional Chair. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you for bringing up the tree planting for our CAO, Paul Allure, down in Ajax. It is clear that they held you, Mr. CAO, in high esteem in Ajax for the 18 years you worked there? 20 years you worked there. And I just want you to know that we benefit from those years. We hold you in very high esteem as well, and it is very well deserved. So congratulations on that. Thank you. And I did intend to bring that up, and I neglected to do that. I'd like to ask Regional Chair if I know in the spring there was an estimate of how much the provincial downloading was going to cost, and at that point it was around 10 million. I know we don't have a lot of a lot of the details yet, which is unfortunate because we are all looking at our 2020 budgets. But is there any further idea of how much this is going to cost us from what we've learned so far?
So the estimate at the region was somewhere close to $50 million.
50 million. Mhm.
50 million. Now, we have done some key things at the region to make it much more manageable, and we have done that. And I'm proud of the staff coming together to find opportunities and ways to really make a difference. But to give you an idea on the regional portion of the property taxes or in the regional budget, it's estimated to be about half of 1%.
Mm-hmm. Half of 1%. Wow, that's incredible. You see that on the agenda there that we have transit next, and I know that transit is looking at our concerns in the north, and we're really looking forward to some of the ideas that they've got to put forward. But we really appreciate that we've seen evidence that there is increasing attention being paid to the north down at the region, and we certainly do appreciate that in a number of areas, not just transit. So thank you for that. And I know that one of the things that Regional Council has felt very strongly about, and the region itself, is the pre-servicing of employment lands. And I know that things are underway now about how we can see that happen, and we do appreciate that. It's so important to Greenbelt communities like Scugog Township. So with that, I'll leave the door open for other questions from Council. Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. We also wanted to say a huge thank you to the Region of Durham, to our Mayor, our CAO, our Regional Councillor Watton for advocating for, and to Durham Region for approving a tourism coordinator to serve the three northern municipalities. There was a successful pilot project in Scugog, and we appreciate that you saw that and recognized the value of tourism and are supporting that. That's a huge thank you from us. I remember way back when, many years ago, long before you were mayor or regional chair, I remember how you ran your business. You were the type of person who always came forward and didn't just supply products, but came and were there in person to build relationship and to be the face behind the product. And I watch how you handle what you do as chair, and how well you represent all of us, and how visible you are in our communities. We saw you at the farm at Durham Advisory event, and so many other events like the Vets for Corvettes. You were there with us, and I want to echo our mayor's sentiments. We have such great respect for how you've hit the ground running, like from the big GM announcement right the very first month already when you first started, and it's been a huge amount of effort that was undertaken. And I just wanted to mention, thank you for speaking to the Government of Canada on behalf of Durham, and also for speaking for Scugog for the timely approval of projects to build our transportation network, broadband access, expansion of public works projects, childcare funding, waste management, diversion, community housing, and specifically you advocated for funds from the government for Scugog's alternative water supply source and for our water main installation and replacement. And I think that this is a fitting time to say thank you to you for all of this, all of your many efforts. It's greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that, but really it's a team. It is all of us working together, and Your Worship, you're also aware that our boards of trades and Chamber of Commerce are all working together to drive the message of how amazing this region is. And it is, and I say this all the time, it is Durham's time.
Mm-hmm. Councillor Brown.
Mr. Chair, good day. Good day. Thank you for your presentation. I think you're widely admired in a lot of respects. I hope you don't mind if I ask you one question about the transit in Port Perry and the cuts that Metrolinx has made. I'm not sure that there's anything you can do or have done or wish to do, but I thought you might have a comment on it.
So on my rant for the moment, I really cannot figure out Metrolinx at all. And the challenges that we're having is in a time when the great equalizer is a transit service that works for all. And the changes they make, we find out about the changes in Metrolinx basically when you find out. We find out when route changes are happening before we can coordinate our transit system to meet with Metrolinx. I'm discouraged by the way Metrolinx forgets about the most important item they need, and that is people. and they make changes. So we are aware. I know that our transit team is working with this, but you know, when you just look at something as simple as moving people along the rail corridor, if the Lakeshore East rail line is the most successful part of the Metrolinx program, and the GTHA has the worst commute times in all of North America, worse than New York, worse than Los Angeles, and you were losing $8 billion a year in vehicles being stuck on the 400 series highways, wouldn't you want to fix this? And wouldn't you want to do it as quickly as possible and make it work? So on the issues of the routing challenges, I'm not able to really help you. Our transit team behind you might be able to give you some more answers today. But Metrolinx bought the land to build the GO station in Oshawa. They have land in Clarington. They had a plan. There was only one plan. They've done the EA to utilize the rail corridor on the north side of the 401. And 30 minutes before a public meeting, they phoned the region on a conference call to tell us there is 3 other options. On the south side of the 401, there will be no development. There will be no residential development. And under the province's places to grow, and if you read the section about where the moving of people, and you talk about walkability, cycling, and you talk about a transit system to get people to the train station, to get them out of their cars, wouldn't you want to build a system where people actually live versus areas where people don't exist at all? And you know, when the end of the route is a truck stop, an old truck stop at Bowmanville Road, Region Road 57, where you get off the 401 at the end of the day, where it's backed up every day with traffic, and nobody lives, does that really make sense? So I'm equally as frustrated as you are with how Metrolinx is trying to figure out the transit system. And we continue to fight for the services that our residents deserve.
Thank you.
Regional Chair, you'll be glad to know that Skookog did support the region's comments on the east future development for Metrolinx, and supported your comments.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? Councilor McDougall?
Yes, sorry, yes, thank you for coming, Chair Henry. Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the region for taking on road safety. In Ward 1 last year, between October the 6th and now, I've had 7 deaths in my ward on our roads. Now, some of them are siloized on provincial roads, some of them, and the other 2 are on regional roads, but is a very significant item in my ward specifically. So I'd like to thank the region for taking that on, and I hope our partners take it seriously. That's all.
Did you want to comment on that?
Well, thank you, but it really is a partnership. It is the great work that you're doing as a council, the great efforts of your fire department and your public works people, and working together with Durham Regional Police, our EMS, all of the people that work on our roads for doing the right thing at the right time. Vision Zero is a great program. And going forward, working together, you know, if people would simply leave 5 minutes earlier instead of 5 minutes late, you know, it would make a big difference. But, you know, we've recently passed some we're going to use technology. There'll be cameras out there capturing some of this, and hopefully that will help as well. And if you're going to get caught. It's just a matter of when and where.
Councilor Brannigan?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor, just one more question, if I may. And if I missed this, I apologize, because I was trying to look something up while I was listening to you at the same time. Tolls on the 418. Did you mention that?
No, I didn't, but I'm glad you did. Because if you want to fix some of the traffic problems that we're having, take the tolls off the 412 and the 418. And the other part of my rant is Durham Region is the only region in Ontario that is being punished by tolls on roads that connect to a toll road. There is no other place. The residents of this community, the region of Durham, paid for all the infrastructure for people to access the 407 and other communities, and the end result for us is let's punish our residents by putting tolls on the 412 and the 418. If you want to fix the traffic problems through the city, if you want to get people home at the end of the day, take the tolls off the 412 and don't put them on the 418. Use them as access roads to get to the 401, and take the burden of that traffic off of Simcoe Street, take it off of some of our other roads so that people can get to where they need to be. And Councillor Brown, you're absolutely right. There should have never been tolls on either of these roads, and Durham Region's residents deserve to be treated with the same respect as every other resident throughout Ontario. And by the way, when we had a conversation with Alan Thompson, the mayor of Caledon, on the new 413, they don't know that the 413 is going to be a toll road in that community. I was the first person to bring it up to them. So, you know, there's no reason why there should be tolls on roads, because if you count the cars on the 412 today, there is the one person using it and one OPP officer waiting to catch them. That's it. It's hardly ever used, and that's a shame. Because if you build a highway to connect people, the highway should be used.
And the region has been very vocal, and we supported that as well.
And so has the chambers in the Board of Trades. It has been, there is a lot of support, and you'll hear now that they're reviewing it. Sorry. But we should have an answer, but there shouldn't be tolls on those roads. And it's unfair to expect us to pay for infrastructure as residents in Durham Region, in other parts of Ontario, if it's not fair and equal. This is not fair, and it's definitely not equal.
Any other questions? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Mr. Chair, I'd like to ask you some questions regarding our road safety, in particular the red light cameras and the speed. I'm just looking back at Councillor Watton's report that she gave us, was the speed enforcement program. Unfortunately, Scugog didn't seem to make the cut for these cameras. Is there a reason why Scugog was not chosen?
The staff at the region used database decision-making, utilizing intersections that had the most challenges, and that's how they came up with the plan that they have. Going forward, it doesn't mean that it won't be expanded. Going forward, there is a revenue source from this. It's not as big as what, and I don't have the breakdown, but it's not as large as for the region. It's shared. The municipality will get some dollars. So it was simply our staff using their skills, using database decision-making on incidents that have already taken, and that's why those particular intersections were picked.
Thank you. And if I may, on behalf of many residents here in Scugog that would likely respectfully beg to differ with the data, that many of our roads would require similar attention, and hopefully in the future that Scugog would be considered for this, because the safety of our residents is concerning for many. There's videos on unsafe turns and speeding that we would really like to see some benefits here in Scugog on that.
I can say that this year in our budget at the region that council approved, there was 29 new police officers. First time that we've hired police officers since, I believe, 2006. There's an ask coming forward from the chief in this year's budget to make sure that we hire more police officers to meet the growth. So we have dedicated traffic officers throughout the region, and utilizing some of the new tools that we're allowed to utilize, we should be able to do a much better job than before the tools existed. But I'm hoping that the regional councillors, when the refinance comes through, looks at some of the new hires that we have to make. And you know, you cannot grow a region as quickly as we are, fastest growing region in Ontario, without making investments in public safety and police, EMS. And you're seeing it here with your investments in your fire department.
Thank you.
Anything further? Well, again, thank you, Regional Chair, for visiting us today and informing us of keeping us up to date. And again, you're no stranger to Scugog Township, and we certainly do appreciate that. So,
well, thank you for the opportunity, and to your worship, and to council and staff and the people in the audience. I wish you just an awesome day, and thank you. And I'll see you at the committee of the whole meeting on Wednesday morning.
yeah, you'll see me at Finance tomorrow morning.
And finance tomorrow morning. Thank you.
Thank you again. Motion please to receive the presentation by John Henry, Regional Chair and CEO of the Region of Durham. Motion to receive. Councillor Watton, Councillor McDougall, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Watton and McDougall. Okay. Next, we have Christopher Norris, Durham Region Transit, the Rural Service Review, and we are anxiously awaiting what ideas that you have to fix our problems in the north. So, welcome.
Good morning, Madam Mayor. I'm Bill Holmes. I'm the acting general manager at DRT. So thank you for having us today and inviting us out. And I just wanted to pick up a little bit on the discussion going forward earlier. And we can say we were at Uxbridge this morning, so you might want to talk about that Jersey thing with the mayor. We didn't quite notice it today, so with all that. In terms of the Metrolinx changes, we're unable to speak on behalf of Metrolinx, but part of why we're here is to talk about what we're doing in creating value in transportation for residents throughout the rural areas. As the chair expressed, in September, we made a number of enhancements to access for DRT to the northern region. And we saw over 200% increase in our ridership in 1 month alone. So we did that just simply through making it a little more accessible. But we know we can do more, and that's part of the work that we're doing this fall, and that's what Christopher here is going to explain to you, is the rural review that we're undertaking and what that looks like. Christopher.
Thank you, and good afternoon. So I'm just going to go over a bit what the Rural Transit Review encompasses and a bit of a status of where we're at and where are we going. So the Rural Transit Review is a comprehensive review of all of our transit services in the rural areas of Durham Region. So that's scheduled service, so in Scugog, that'd be Route 950, our on-demand and our specialized service delivery. And really having a look at how new and enhanced technology provides us with an opportunity to improve our service and the experience for our customers. So that could be improving our reach, looking at how effective we are, how efficient we are, and meet a lot more of that varied mobility demand that exists out there. So the three questions that we're answering as part of the review is looking at what service delivery models exist out there in peer jurisdictions to deliver transit services, in rural areas. Recommend a model that works and is best suited for the mobility in Durham Region in those rural areas. And the third part is key to all this as well, is having a look at our communication strategies and making recommendations on what's most effective to get our message out there. So how are we doing this? So we're doing a review of that current service. How are we doing right now? What's working? What are some of the challenges? We're looking at forecasting some of that demand. So what are our markets? What are some of the trends that we're seeing? As I mentioned, we're doing a bit of a peer review model. What are others doing, and what can we take from that and build on? We're looking at industry best practice and some of the innovation that's going on. So a lot of mobile, but we're also ensuring that we want to catch those that aren't data-driven right now. We have a big part of it is public engagement that I'll touch base in future slides. And what we're going to report back on is what that service delivery model that's best suited for and what works for our residents here in Durham. So we've done a number of things about industry best practice and then some innovation. So we've done a high 10,000 foot level scan of North America and jurisdictions, and then we're doing a bit of a deeper dive into 6 municipalities across Canada, Wellington County, which just launched Ridewell, Belleville, that's done a bit of an on-demand with a bit of a startup, Airdrie, just out of Calgary, Innisfil, that's partnered with Uber, which is really unique. York Region, which has been doing a bit of an on-demand in their rural service areas for a while now, and Waterloo Region as well. Tacked on to that is that we're also going to interact with 4 ride platform companies. So Uber, Via, who's an American company, Ryco, who's a Waterloo, Waterloo offspring, and Pantonium, which is also based in Toronto. So what we're wanting to do here is that we want to double check what the software providers are telling us is matching up with some of the experience that the municipalities and how they've done and rectified their challenges and what some of the successes were. We've done a bit of an online survey throughout the month of September. We've had over 175 replies. We've hit all of our rural transit routes in Scugog, Uxbridge, Brock, and Clarington. We've attended a number of fairs, including the one here in Port Perry, and leveraged our social media and website tools to do that. What's unique about this initiative here is that we're doing some market research through some focus group. We're holding 4 focus groups at the end of the month through invitation only throughout the region. We're hoping to attract 10 to 15 participants for each of those, which will be public and customers alike, local BIAs, BOTs, EDCs, partnerships with post-secondary institutions and some of the local associations. And we've retained a third party to help us facilitate and structure these discussions. A bit of what's going to be top of mind there is what the mobility needs are in the rural areas. Walking through and getting comments back about what those service delivery models could be, what works, what's a flag, what isn't, how the fare integration would work through that, how you would pay your fare, what's that customer experience, how we would coordinate and integrate with our own DRT-based network, but also that of GOES and York Regions and other neighboring municipalities. Customer interface, and you'll see a bit of a snapshot of my own phone there, but be it through an application-based database or through the phone, what's that customer interface need to be, and how do we ensure seamless mobility in those rural areas? That communication strategy, what works, what doesn't, where do you get your news type of thing, and ensuring accessibility and transparency for customers and residents that are wishing to do that. A couple of our next steps. So in the fall, we'll be completing that market-based focus group. So those are scheduled for the end of the month. We're completing that industry review and that best practices, so those interviews with the software providers and municipal service delivery. Start looking at what those best service delivery models or combination of that best fit expectations and the needs of Durham residents, and really looking at how do we plan on transitioning from what we have today to whatever that suggested recommended model is. So in 2020, we expect to be able to implement that first transitioning, and that'll be part of the DRT budget ask through the regional budgeting process. And then after that, we expect that we'll be able to leverage some of the opportunities that we've created through this process to expand it elsewhere in the region where we may have low-performing services. Thank you.
Does that complete your presentation?
Yes, it does.
Thank you very much. I think the important thing is that you're listening, because we have been saying for quite some time, and it's understandable. We don't have the population here, but we do have the need. And we're really pleased that Durham Transit is listening and is willing to take all the information that they can and do something about it. So we're really pleased about that. Do I have any questions? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And yes, you definitely heard from Scugog residents when we had the 950 bus route change. So thank you for changing it back to what our residents needed. I'd like to ask you a question on the focus group, and perhaps I missed it, but how are you choosing the 10 to 15 people that will be participating?
So we've retained a third party to help us build that structure that best represents the unique needs and nature of each of the individual municipalities where we're holding those focus groups. So we're really trying to tailor that to what best represents what's going on at the local municipal level.
Okay, so that third party, would they liaise at all with the township to determine if what they feel is the best group versus what we may be able to suggest?
So we're reaching out to a number of local associations and some of the committees, so like the accessibility advisory committees, pardon me, to try to get that representation and entice them in participating in those focus groups.
And I would, I don't want to assume, but would the seniors club be part of who they would choose to select? The only reason I ask is that a very large population of the seniors do use the bus. Now, whether or not we can debate how full our buses are, that's a different discussion, but the seniors would like to be included. I'm sorry, I don't know if that's my feedback, and the seniors would like to be included in that kind of focus group.
We've noted that, and we'll take that back and ensure that that's addressed by our third party.
Thank you.
Now, Councillor Guido makes a good point. I think, it would be advisable to check with our staff here to see what input we could provide about who should be invited to these focus groups, because who knows better about our township than the people in our township. So I'll take that under advisement. Good point. Other questions? Councillor Brown?
Gentlemen, thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. I just want to make sure I understand correctly. When you were talking about Airdrie a little while ago, I don't know how easy it is to access that slide, but there's 6 municipalities you're looking at, and they use different methods. You're trying to figure out the best one. Is that more or less correct to start?
What we're trying to do is ensuring that we're not leaving any stone unturned on what's being done out there, so that we get a good, complete picture of what innovation or what service deliveries methods that are out there, and that we aren't taking a deep dive. We're taking a deep dive into 6 of them that are sufficiently different so that we're not getting the same type of information and experience back.
Right, and subsequent, if I may. So I see Rideco on here for Airdrie and for Wellington County. So that's third party. So do I understand that you're looking at a third party operated service in this area? And are you considering outsourcing then also or not?
It could be any combination of. At this point, we haven't received any data, and no decisions or recommendations have been presented to the council. So that may change. What that solution would be has not been formulated at this point.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Anything else? Councillor McDougall?
Thank you. Sorry. Thank you for your presentation today. Through you, Madam Mayor. Question, is your visit today in response to the cancellation of the 81A GO Bus service and 81 service?
No, it is not. This is a separate strategy to the Metrolinx service decisions.
Okay, because there is correspondence from Metrolinx in our agenda today with regards to the cancellation. I know that DRT has looked at picking up some of that service, I believe, in response to the cancellation. Has the province provided you with the funding from the savings from that route cancellation?
There's been no transfer of funds linked to the routes cancellation.
Is DRT, through you, Madam Mayor, is DRT inter-regional or an intra-regional transit service?
We do a bit of both of column A and column B, as so from Port Perry we link into City of Kawartha. We do from Brock out to Orillia. We go into Toronto, York Region, and correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but Northumberland County maybe.
So through you, Madam Mayor. So the DRT service is not, the idea is not to replicate the 81 and 81A routes that have been removed in terms of trying to travel intra-regional, say between Union Station and Port Perry.
I would suggest that we do have services that connect into the Lakeshore East line, and that we facilitate that travel, and there's a fair integration agreement between what was Metrolinx GO Transit and DRT to incentivize that travel with DRT and Go. I could suggest that those travel patterns would be captured through our rule review and may make recommendations on that.
Further through, Madam Mayor. So the DRT focus, is it, I mean, in all fairness to Go, I mean, it was pretty hard and fast in their routes, their stops. You knew where to get it. You knew what time to get it. From 1999 until now, they've slowly been densifying those routes. And it was designed to be efficient and effective to move you to a GO train station, which you could then take a GO train to the City of Toronto. Is the efficiency and effectiveness to be able to get from, say, a hub and spoke model where you're in Port Perry or Uxbridge. Uxbridge is a bad example because they have Lincolnville close. But let's say Beaverton to Union Station in an effective manner that you no longer would need to take a car to make that efficient. Is that a focus of the DRT?
I would suggest that we will be looking at all travel patterns and trends within the rural areas and suggesting a service delivery model that tries to provide that flexibility to be able to make that type of trip.
Okay, very good. That's all. Thank you.
Anything further? Councillor Kieserbrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you, gentlemen, very much for your report. In looking at the, I think it was your second to the last slide or the last slide, where you identified what the summary actions were going to be in the fall. There we go. And then in 2020, you mentioned that, you know, completing those market-based focus groups, the reviews, identifying the models, and then creating a plan to transition to the new model. We really appreciate the time that you've given today to present your strategy moving forward and what you're undertaking. I was wondering if you could perhaps add another bullet in between the identifying the models and creating the plan to transition, and maybe come and we'd love to hear from you again, just to kind of bring us up to speed on what your findings were when you assessed, you know, these other community models, but utilizing Uber, utilizing different apps. We'd love to know what the findings were and understand how you arrived at the best DRT model moving forward, and then, you know, with the explanation of the plan and how you're moving forward from there. It really helps a lot for us to be able to communicate to constituents if we have that understanding, and if we also have a chance to just kind of maybe speak a little bit to it as well when you get to that final phase.
Yes, if you'll have us, we'll be glad to come back.
Yeah, communication is the key here. Huge. Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just further to my colleague's comments about vehicle ridership or using a vehicle as opposed to ridership on transit. When you look to the trends and you are looking at a rural area, how do you assess the ability to increase ridership, or is it part of your analysis when many people drive because there is not that option? How can you arrive at those numbers to create an argument to increase it?
So this is part as well of the looking at those 6 municipalities and what their experience. They're at different levels of maturity, and we expect to be able to have a look at what their successes were and how they arrived to that, and what kind of market uptake they were able to attain with their services, and apply a conservative measure, most likely, to what we would be able to do here in Durham.
So would you safely, or could you safely say that part of your goal is to reduce vehicle transportation? Or is that not come into play for what Durham Transit is hoping to do? Is it part of your strategy, I guess?
I think that's part of our overall mandate at DRT, and what we're trying to do here is really create a successful model where we're able to enable that in very quickly and in a very successful way.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Well, thank you very much for your presentation today, and I'd ask for a motion that the presentation by Christopher Norris and from Durham Region Transit be received. Councillor Guido, Councillor Ross, all in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much for updating us, and we'll look forward. I'm glad to see that it's probably going to be starting to transition in the spring of next year, so that's wonderful news. Thank you. Moving along now to our next delegation, Jocelyn Sikorsky, Larry Corrigan, and Rob Smith from North Durham Pickleball Residents, page 5 in your agenda package. Welcome. Okay, are we ready? Please go ahead.
Thank you, Your Worship. First of all, I'll say it's a pleasure being here and to meet the members of council. And a bit of a change in topic, outdoor pickleball courts. I'm Jocelyn Sikorsky. I live at 375 Waterbury Crescent in Port Perry. And I am the lead for working towards outdoor pickleball courts in this community that are adaptive for everyone, all age groups, recreational courts. And we'd like to say we're very pleased to see that in the master plan of the township that the need for future outdoor pickleball courts is acknowledged. We think that's fabulous. There is a long history of pickleball that originated here in Durham. I don't know if everyone is aware, but the original Association for Pickleball started here in Durham. And under the leadership of Durham has grown, and they believe now that there's well over 22,000 players in the province. So we're here today really to talk about those outdoor courts, and there's 6 things that I would like to share with you. One is that we really do support an integrated approach to future expansion of recreational sports in the area. We want to work with you. Secondly, we want to also work in partnership with the township to go after access to capital grant funding, to be able to identify it and to be able to secure it. But in that process, we really would appreciate if the township was the project manager, as we are not an incorporated entity. We are really just a community of people who enjoy the sport and really are able to gain the benefits off it. Thirdly, we would like to also say that we are prepared to do our part in fundraising around this grant process. We recognize there's a need for that too, and we will do our part. Fourthly, we would like to make a point that please, let's work together to do it right the first time, that in terms of a court build, we don't rush and do it inappropriately. Many of us in the summer, we don't have access to really good court facilities, so we play at many other places. We have seen what works for outdoor court build, and we know the people that do it well, and we have seen the one that rush through it in other communities. And I say that because if you rush to just use hot asphalt, you're going to have cost issues in terms of work orders going forward, and you're going to have to resurface it in no time. So rather wait, let's work together, do the appropriate surfacing around penetration asphalt, appropriate acrylic and fiberglass surface. It's much easier on the township's long-term pocketbook. You don't have to deal with cracks with our winter and the resurfacing of the area. Plus, it's a lot easier on the joints and knees of the players. Another point we'd like to make is we are asking council to commit to leverage asset management reserve funds as appropriate as we move forward together on this initiative. Finally, we would like to mention that we are very pleased now that the scheduling is sort of under the domain of the Recreation Department. We think it works very well. It's opening up possibilities to other players. We have seen since the summer a 24% growth in our membership. We're at 224 this year. And still, we're not able to deliver opportunities for the people who are really full-time employees, younger people in the community. And we've noted that's highlighted in your master plan, is trying to make it more accessible, making times more accessible on the weekend and the evening for these group of people. So we would like to go forward in partnership with the township to look at options here. We could have more accessibility to time on the weekend and in the evening. And we're happy to be the convener to help out. And in the end here, it's a really good bottom line alternative for the community, particularly for the recreational department, because the funds for the additional hours go directly to you, and we are willing to partner and help out. So with that, I guess we leave you, and we're open to questions, and thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much for your presentation and for the package that you provided for us. And congratulations on the success that you've achieved in the last few years since it started here in Scugog Township. Are you affiliated with, as part of an association, a provincial or federal association?
No, we're not.
Have you thought about that?
We are members of the Pickleball Association of Ontario and Pickleball Canada for those that compete. We have a lot of players that are recognized in competition, both nationally, internationally, all age groups, and provincially. Mm-hmm. But these are organizations that are starting, and if you're thinking of ways of funding flow through grants through that door, it's not available.
No, that's not where I was going. Actually, as a member of the associations,
Mm-hmm.
You may have the ability to apply for grants yourself. And we would, because you're using our facilities, we would, I think that I speak for council when I say we would give you our blessing to apply for those grants. I'm presuming that you're talking about the grant that is due in November?
Well,
was it 12th or?
We are aware of that grant.
Mm-hmm.
We also are aware of other ones like New Horizon,
Mm-hmm.
where in this case the municipality is really the project manager. The funds must flow through the municipality, and that will probably open up again in I'm going to say early in the new year. We're also aware that there are Trillium grants out there in the capital stream if they continue next year, and in that case we recognize that the township cannot be the project manager
Mm-hmm.
for it, and we would have to look at maybe other community organizations that would help out in that regard.
Well, yes, if you find a nonprofit organization that can
Yes.
work with you, and I mean, it can be your national or your provincial association, but it could also be any other nonprofit organization that could apply for the grant on your behalf.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, I will leave that open to other questions. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you, Ms. Sikorsky, for your presentation. Just, I think the Mayor has brought to light, is there an executive at all that's in place as far as, I know you mentioned yourself being the lead of the group, but.
What we have, and I'll let Rob speak to this, is a loose-formed group that come together in the leadership role for the North Durham Pickleball Group, and we call it a club, but we are not incorporated.
Not incorporated, but is there like a leadership model that you have at all?
Yes, there's about 3 or 4 people that are in the leadership role.
Okay. Just further to that, just with your, I think you said your membership numbers have grown to 224 now, which is fantastic. I know that I'm all for active communities and people getting out and new sports and everything. And I think it's important to develop those partnerships with other existing facilities that we have right now. I know going to the tennis courts, sometimes you'll see tape down to change the court width on a tennis court down to a pickleball size court. And I know that in talking with both sides, that there is I don't want to say tension, but it's 2 groups competing for, the limelight and moving forward. Has there been any movement in working with the Port Perry Tennis Club into finding a common ground to be able to use the courts?
I think that's an absolutely great question, really. There has been an approach in the past, but they are their own entity and they are a club. We are more a recreational group coming together. And at the time, there really wasn't interest in putting lines down at all on their court facilities. I mean, we're open to that as a beginning.
Perhaps, if I may suggest, just moving forward, and happy for anyone to facilitate it, including myself, is to bring the two groups together and see if the existing structures that we have can be used, not necessarily painting, using the same lines on the same tennis court, but based on areas available off the court to see if something can be brought to light that we can use, that you can have an outdoor facility that may not be spec'd precisely to the grade and quality of the ground that you want, but it would be a tennis court base, but to bring the two groups together because we have that existing facility now. And I know that playing tennis and seeing the tennis club out there, it has at certain times where it's quite busy, but then there's certain areas that it's not, and to see if the two groups could come together. And I know it's if you have a leadership model, then that's great. We can identify two groups coming together, but if that would be of interest to your group moving forward.
Thank you, Councillor Ross. We're open to any suggestions, and we know by experience that in many other places across the province, there's been mutual accord and working together in terms of pickleball lines placed on tennis courts because they see that as a good financial option, and they see the growth of the sport. So we're open to that. We're also seeing too, though, that as the demand for the sport increases across the province, we're seeing less of that kind of model and more the build of dedicated courts because the volume is there. As well, we're seeing that tennis as a sport, the growth isn't the same. It's not there. So it seems to be shrinking, and pickleball seems to be picking up the broader perspective.
Just one last point. Thank you. I think what I'd like to avoid is just having, if the 224 members that you have now, seeing that, you know, people are taking it upon themselves to put tape down, paint down on the courts, that there is this overlap of two competing organizations on the same field because you don't have a proper spot or an area that's designated for that. And before we start damaging areas that are used for tennis because we're multi-purposing them, to actually have a conversation to see if we can come up with another solution moving forward while we look for fundraising for an outdoor court, which, as you've pointed out, is not very timely ever. So
we're open to that as a first step, and then continue to also keep our eye on the ball, Your Worship, around opportunities to partner with the township in terms of capital grant opportunities. You know, we'll do our part in that as well. But it would be a nice initial first step. I'm actually surprised, Councillor Ross, that you're raising taping on the tennis courts here because we have no access to those courts, so we don't tape the courts.
The tape for the tennis ball has been there, or the pickleball has been there, and I'm not saying it's your group necessarily, but I think because there's no overarching, it's people that play the sport, right? Perhaps are frustrated that there is no outdoor sport.
Could be.
And that's what's happening. So that's what, because there's no entity, I can just say it is people that play pickleball, and you just want to avoid, you know, this can be a win-win for everybody, I think, 100%. It's a very positive thing that's coming of it. We just want to make sure that it's those people who, as it's growing, understand what can actually happen on those tennis courts, and moving forward, provide them a spot to play pickleball.
We're open to that
Great.
suggestion
Perfect.
as a first step.
Further questions? Councillor Watton, then Councillor Brown. You too.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you folks for your presentation. And I know you're very, very keen, and I know that we've had several meetings, and I commend you on your desire to grow the sport. I do have a couple of questions, though. Again, my own personal opinions on this is that I've heard a couple of times you're just a group of people that want to play pickleball. I think it would be prudent to be more than a group of people who want to play pickleball. if you're asking, you know, the township to help with funding, to source sites, and so on and so forth, I truly believe that you should have an executive and be a recognized, and please don't take that wrong, a recognized club per se, i.e. a treasurer, you know, a couple of directors, or maybe you have that and you just haven't formalized it, I don't know. But I would suggest formalizing that. That would be a good idea. You've grown from 224. What were you initially, or growing to 224?
10 years ago, we started through a grant, actually from council. And we started off with about 44, 49 players. And it has grown accordingly now because we're opening it up further to the youth and to younger people. The only problem is people are working during the day, so they have no access time. It was previously limited only to seniors. And yes, just to answer your question, there is a form of structure. There are people one would call directors, but under the definition of a corporate entity, we don't fall under that.
Right. But there's lots of clubs out there that possibly don't fall under being incorporated or
Right.
what. I just wondered, because I didn't get that impression through what you were talking, that you did have that. So I'm glad to hear that. So then, as a more formal club, do you carry insurance?
No, we do not.
Is that possible through having people sign up through your club and become members of the provincial? I note that you only said there were people that compete. So what happens if someone gets hurt? If you don't have that insurance, and if you do expand your program and someone gets hurt?
Right now, we play under the auspices of the recreational department, right? So we're covered under their insurance. It's a drop-in fee. We play.
Okay.
We pay.
Okay.
Apart from that, there is insurance coverage if all the members were a member of the Pickleball Association of Ontario.
Right.
It would be basic liability coverage for injury. But it's not needed because it's covered under the recreational department coverage, or it's a drop-in.
Okay, so as long as the town can provide you the venue,
Yes,
and during the hours that it's open, then you have the coverage for that to occur.
yes.
And if I read through your delegation, you're hoping for more time.
We would like
Through-
to respond to the needs as identified in the master plan of people who are working during the day and youth, to have some evening time and some weekend time, and work with the township to plan that out. We would be happy to be the convener, as we are now with the day program, to make it more accessible. But also remember, there's a financial advantage here too for the township. One weekend in September, we opened it up, and there were a lot of people that did come in, and we were able to pass over $250 to the township that otherwise would not have been there. So it does help the township's bottom line too in terms of the recreational budget.
Do you have any data that would indicate how much more time you would require, or like right now, I believe you have one night a week, right?
Actually,
If it's available.
if
Is
it's
that how it works?
available, we don't. I'll let Rob answer this, but
Okay.
we're tracking the data with the cooperation of the staff at the rec center.
Rob?
Your Worship, thank you very much for this opportunity. We have a certain amount of time at the arena now. There are other times available outside of that times. It is based on scheduling and programming from the arena. We did have what I call a pop-up event, which was advertised 2 days before the Saturday, and basically it was to introduce pickleball to the public. It was a open house, and we did manage to get 15 new people sign up. We had a couple of people aged 10 and 12 years old that came out, and we did give approximately $250 to the township after which. The question of insurance was brought up after that, and that we need to register that program. And if we're registered with the township here and we're paying our fee, we're automatically insured to play in this facility. To grow the sport more in the township, we have to have weekends and nights available to us for people that are working, families that kids that go to school. So there are available times now. And there is a policy in place that does not allow us to have these times because it's not based on a Saturday in October and it's the same Saturday in November and the same Saturday in December. What our programs are based on is that if it's open, we want the facility. If it's collecting dust and it's dark in there, it's not making any money for the township, and we can make that happen by our communication systems. We have emails that we send out to everybody. We have a program where we can put the ideas in the paper. We can rent space to say that we're now open for all ages on the weekend. But the problem is that we get bumped now during the week for other events in there. And if we got bumped on the weekend, because we don't pay the full pop, full price I think is around $700. We pay $3 per person to play at the arena. So, but if the arena's empty, that $3 is still $3. So it's programming is an issue. The policy on programming would have to be changed, and we'd have to go forward from there. But I know we can fill the facilities.
Thank you. If I may, Madam Mayor, just one further comment then. I believe you can grow it as well. And if I would like to suggest that staff work with you to try and come up perhaps with, I don't know, a memorandum of understanding or something. But how would you feel if, say, I mean, you would have to come forward with a program. I think that would be important. So 2 Saturdays a month, you want to have it from 10 till 2. And you would have to probably look at that. But then with the option that through a memorandum of understanding that if the township could rent it for, say, a wedding, that you would have to be bumped. Because if I understand you correctly, you're pulling it together kind of last minute anyway.
Well,
is that correct?
We do have a schedule from Monday to Thursday. We actually are bumped 3 times.
No, I meant for your new.
For the new times. We'd like to have the new times. Once we have those times, we can set out in the process to figure out what's the best way to get the people to advertise it. So we first need the times.
So again, though, then you wouldn't be open, if I'm hearing you correctly, open to, then you would have to be paying the rate.
Yes, and of course.
Rather than expect the township to forego a revenue that is $500 or $600 more than might be brought in.
So what we've been used to since the very beginning, sorry to interrupt, is that we get bumped. And we get bumped by people who pay full pop for the facility. And we understand that. And that our communication system is such that we can tell people within a couple of days of that Saturday event coming up that we no longer have the arena for Saturday, and we can send out the emails. And we can get confirmations back that we did get bumped for a program that's going to pay the full amount at the arena.
Okay, so that's what I was getting at. So
Yes.
if you had a memorandum of understanding that said
Yes.
you could use it this time, these days, so on and
Yeah.
so forth, with the understanding in the memorandum that should something such as a wedding come along, that you would be bumped.
Yeah.
Would that be something that you could work
Absolutely.
with staff?
We're working that now.
Absolutely, but
now.
that's been in existence from the beginning.
Except you're asking for more time.
We're asking for more time.
And you're asking for the policy change.
We're asking to accommodate the people that have no access right now.
But along with that comes the policy change and those other.
Yes.
Thank you.
So you could have Saturdays or maybe another weeknight as well?
Sure.
With the same understanding, under a memorandum of understanding. Other questions? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, thank you. Well, I'm a big fan of this. I played it. I know that you have how many members? 224 members?
Yes,
And yet you've got some North American champions.
that's right.
I think one of them is in this room.
Mm-hmm.
And Karen Mundinger wants me to play against her, and there's no flipping way that's gonna happen. So obviously, whatever you're doing seems to work. The problem is, you're a modest group, you don't have a lot of money, and you're asking for, you asked $3 per person. And I'm unclear, you want to be part of the tennis group if you can be? You're part of the seniors club now technically, right?
No, we're no longer with the Seniors Club.
Oh,
We are now just under the auspices of the township through a drop-in program. It has opened it up to other age groups. We used to be part of the Seniors Club, but it was very restrictive in terms of age.
okay, so right now, right now you're indoors,
Yes,
you're trying to make that work.
yes.
You keep getting bumped, but it's okay because the members understand you keep getting bumped and you get the word out.
We're not too worried about the bumping. We've had a good relationship with the recreational staff. So we don't get bumped a lot, but when we do, we understand it and we just get the word out and say, hey, it's canceled this Tuesday or whatever.
Okay.
That's not an issue for us at all.
Yeah. So indoors, you're okay.
Indoors, we're okay. In the summer, we don't have access. The township has tried to help us gain access through schools the last 2 years in the summer. The problem there is there's no air conditioning, and it's a health and safety issue. So many of the players go to Markham, they go to Newmarket, they go to Whitby, they go to Lindsay, they go to Peterborough, they go to Oshawa to play on the outdoor courts, because that's where they are.
Are those outdoor courts, through you, Madam Mayor, are those outdoor courts tennis courts?
No, they're recreational. Some are. The one in the outskirts of Stouffville is a combo, but next year they're building 8 dedicated pickleball courts.
Okay, so, and I understand that you want your own court ideally. Whether we can afford it or not is something we'd have to figure out, but that's what you're after?
That's sort of the long-range goal, but we're here to say, look, we want to work with you. If we can partner around grants, opportunities, we want to do that with you to get there, because we understand that right now that the council is facing some financial challenges as well, and we're not looking to, knock up the tax levy. We are all taxpayers as well, but there are other ways of getting to it if we work in cooperation, and that's why we're here.
And that includes the tennis club.
If I may,
If the tennis club wishes to, but that hasn't been the case in the past. That would be a good start.
Rob?
if I may, Your Worship, we have had no communications with the tennis club. I dropped by and did talk to a gentleman there, and I said, you guys have put your own money into this for years. You're part of the, you're responsible for the maintenance of it. I understand the tennis club is actually leased from the township, and that although other locations, Lindsay, they put 4 pickleball courts on their tennis courts, and we've been told with no uncertain circumstances that you were not to change our lines. We have tournaments here, and that the tournament states that we cannot have any extra lines on those courts, on the tennis courts themselves. So we're not at odds with the tennis club at all, but there is an understanding that it is almost like it's theirs. And we just volunteered on Saturday to put a challenge in the Amazing Race, and we used the tennis courts to set up a couple of pickleball courts. Before we even got started, the guys that were setting it up were approached by the tennis club's people and demanded that why are we here? What do you think you're doing? And they had no idea that this was actually part of the Amazing Race, and that they didn't actually get the okay. And that if they actually asked for us to use the tennis courts, the Amazing Race people actually asked for that, we would have been turned down. So, but in the meantime, that problem, I think that issue has been solved, and that the person that did organize the competition did in fact talk to somebody from, but, so this is the kind of feeling we're getting from the tennis courts people. It's like, hands off, stay away from our courts.
Further?
So in other words, they want you, it's build your own or forget it.
It's
That's
out
what
of
it
respect for them too. It's because of the amount of work they've put into it over the years. If the roles were reversed, I wouldn't want them coming into my backyard saying, I want tennis on your pickleball courts, because, and the amount of money and work we put in it through the entire years. The cost for lining out one pickleball court on a tennis court is $700. You can put 6 courts on that tennis court. But again, with all due respect to their facility, what we figured was that we had no other recourse but to go and try and get our own courts.
Okay, well, it's on my wish list. Director Valentin knows, so good luck.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Kiesebrink, then Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just briefly, just wanted to give you a heads up that when we had the Blackstock recreational event this past week, we talked about all the possible uses that could be identified, because we are working on a grant application and there's some funding potentially available. Pickleball was one of the things that was requested, so that's in keeping with your ask. I just thought you should know that. Not to say that we don't know what the outcome will be, obviously, but that was an exciting evening with many pickleball supporters there as well.
Thank you.
I think Rob was doing some lobbying.
I might have been there. I may have been there.
Anything further? Councillor McDougall, then Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your presentation. Pickleball sure seems to be a hot topic these days. A question, up in Ward 1, we have courts in Greenbank and also courts in Seagrave. Have either of those opportunities been considered or looked at or played on even?
I went up to do some teaching in Greenbank myself, and the courts up there, they were lined out on top of the tennis courts. There's large cracks in the tennis courts and in the surface. We have people that are 80 years old and that love to play this sport and come out and play it. Not necessarily, not anymore. So not necessarily is it the safest thing to have happen. Is that it was a great idea going forward, but should have been more research done to the quality of the courts that the lines were put on. I would recommend that my club players now to be very careful if they did to go up there to play.
So just further through, Madam Mayor, should that court surface be resurfaced, would it work?
That it's also based on location, Your Worship, sorry. Is that having it here in town where the most of the population is and where most people would come, the facilities, the bathrooms, and facilities, and the amount of use that would get here in town as opposed to Greenbank.
Yes.
So you would get, in the shopping facilities, people will travel a long distance to play pickleball. And they usually stay in the community for a while and they do their shopping here. And they become part of the community as well.
So should recreational facilities be built, it would be preferred to have recreational facilities in the town?
Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
But we also want to identify that we are supportive also of wherever your next step is in terms of future development of recreational facilities in the broader Durham as well. Those courts right now are a safety hazard, and that's the issue.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
It's use
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Now I lost my train of thought.
I wonder why.
Oh, in our council package, it mentioned that in the summertime you guys use school facilities. While I appreciate in the summertime it's warm, so we can all imagine how the school children feel in June. What about in the fall through springtime months? Has school facilities been investigated for weekday or weekday evening use and weekend use?
Not as yet, and that's where we're hoping to build that relationship with the recreational staff, who have been very open to this, but we're just here to say, let's move it ahead, and we're open to do that in partnership with them
Right.
for some additional time.
Because
That's no issue.
certainly if we're looking at cost
Yes.
effectiveness, the permit for a school is far less than what we could potentially lose in revenue at the recreation center. So hopefully that is a venue that can be explored to meet your immediate needs for your evening times or weekend times. So hopefully that is something that we can further look into. As far as the tennis club goes, appreciating that I was there to celebrate their 50th anniversary this year, they have built at the tennis courts as far as maintaining them and building up their clubs. So I would suggest that if we are to have talks with them, that you know, keeping that in mind, and it's a positive talk. It's not that they're territorial, but they pay to maintain those facilities. So going in there with that understanding would probably garner a far more positive partnership than worrying whether or not they're open to this. So hopefully that discussion can be facilitated with the township staff if necessary with our tennis club. But let's hope that the permits at the schools is a solution for you.
We have an arrangement with the schools that we get a good rate, so I think, you know, what you collect would probably cover that, so. Did you have something you wanted to add?
If I may address again, we have a program that we've gone through the schools. There's a rental, there's a advanced players now are renting a school Monday evenings. The issue with schools is the size of the courts, how safe it is, and that we have some disabled players coming out to play. And if we go through the program that we were before and saving the money, we had an issue over in Uxbridge where we put tape down, and when we took it off, it took some of the wax off the floor. So the issue now that we have with the person that we could book the school through is that you're not putting any more lines down on any courts in any of the gyms that in Durham region that we could rent from them.
So what, apologies, what kind of tape is used?
We use painter's tape. We've had no issues with any, we rented gyms now, this is our second season, and we play in gyms all the time where we have to put what we call a kitchen line down, and we've had no issues whatsoever with any of the gyms. This one we happened to. The staff said that it's not an issue with us, but apparently it is an issue now, and we've been told that we are no longer able to, if we want to rent schools, we can't use the tape.
You can't use any tape? Or
Any
specific
tape.
Well, that's
Yeah.
unfortunate.
Yes.
But perhaps a conversation can be had if it's managed via our recreation department to understand exactly how we can accommodate continuing our programs through their school. Because that's unfortunate,
that was
because if it's such a cost-effective way to get a permit, it's unfortunate
Yes.
that tape is
And I
holding us
think
up.
Councillor Watton had a good idea with this memorandum of understanding. I think that I'm sorry, were you finished?
Yes,
Councillor
thank
Guido?
you.
Okay. I think that completes our list of questioners. You wanted a grant, and I have to be clear about this. We are applying for a grant for that, what's the name of it in November that we have to have done by? Investing in Canada. Infrastructure. So we are committed to that, and we're putting all our focus on that right now. We don't have the resources to apply for any more, nor do we want to jeopardize the huge grant application that we have, because that's for the Ward 4 recreation facility to replace the arena. However, you know, if you would like to apply for a grant as part of our recreation programming, and if you can get a nonprofit to sponsor the grant for you, I'm sure that I'm speaking on behalf of council that we would be glad to give you our blessing on that, and that would be helpful. So, you know, you just, you know, you can go ahead and apply for grants, and that would be great. Yeah, so we could wish you well with that, and see if there's, council's not nodding no that we wouldn't give our blessing on that, but, yeah.
Thank you, Your Worship. We're aware of that grant. We did speak to the people at the ministry. There are two streams. There's the 50 million and there's the 5 million. And they just said that we wouldn't be competing with that particular grant, but we understand the sensitivity to the issue. And we're appreciative of within the proposal that you're working on, that you're looking to put some pickleball courts in Blackstock. So we understand that. But there are other grants like New Horizon that will come up.
And that would be, we just don't have the resources, but
And
we
we,
would welcome.
we, in that situation, for example, if we have to ask somebody locally to write the grant for us, we can do that. But the grant recipient manager still has to be the municipality. That's part of the qualifications.
And we would give you our blessing.
Okay.
Yeah, I would think that we would give you our blessing to apply for a grant. Don't think that's an issue. Okay.
It's fine.
Councillor Watton?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and speaking to the New Horizon, when I was a very new councillor, our seniors club did apply to the New Horizon through the municipality with their endorsement, but it was, the application was completed outside of the municipality, so to speak, and we were successful. And on the other note, you know, the Trillium, if my experience again has been, I know of several that have had successful grants that have perhaps used, you know, the Rotary Club as the not-for-profit entity to help move it along. So I would certainly not be discouraged by that, because I think those are very positive ways, because not only does it show your initiative, it also shows the collaboration and partnerships with other community groups that are supportive of what you're trying to do. So just further to that, like both of those are very good ones, and I'm sure there will be more as well. But I do thank you for your understanding of ours, and as Councillor Kiesebrink and myself, we have both advocated for the pickleball for the other grant if it does come about. So.
We appreciate that. Just a bit of information around the New Horizon. The Kenora, City of Kenora, was the municipal project manager, and they did get the $25,000 grant under New Horizons for pickleball courts. So they worked in partnership with their township, and that's why I'm saying there's opportunities there. And as well, yes, we have our eye on the Trillium grant if there is still a capital stream that comes out next year. Yeah, thank you.
When I say that we don't have the resources, we apply for all kinds of grants all the time, and we still have to get our day-to-day work done. So, you know, every opportunity that we have for grants for roads and for other infrastructure and anything like that, we're applying for them. And so we really don't have the resources here to write this one as well. But anyway, you know, we certainly wish you all the best, and you'll have our blessing. And we hope that we can move forward. And you know, I think the idea of getting the extra time for the indoor, I think that can work.
Just one question, Your Worship, though. If we got somebody to write it, because the township staff is overstressed around writing grants, if we had somebody to write it for us, would you still be open to the funding flowing through you?
I'll ask the CAO to, like, what are you looking for, the balance of the funding? Because
Well,
you were fundraising.
We're looking to, if we applied for the New Horizon, similar to they did in Kenora, and we outsource the writing of that grant to someone else in the community on our behalf, the funding for that grant does flow through the municipality. Would you be open to that?
I'll let the CAO
It's a first step to get to that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the President, of course, a matter of the investing in Canada Infrastructure Grant, we've discussed that. Council has
decided to proceed with and put all their energy into the grant towards the proposed Blackstock Arena and community facility. They want to put all their emphasis in that. Saying that, though, as was demonstrated the other night, I think it was Thursday night, there's a desire to incorporate pickleball into that facility. And if at the end of the conceptual design and consultation process that remains the same, then that's the grant application would be structured to identify that use as part of the future facility. Future grant applications, I think we have to look at them as they come about individually. What the municipality's commitment is a cost sharing, what the cost of the facility would be. And I think we should look at them as they come about. And then whether it's something the municipality would want to take a lead on, or whether it would be an application you would pursue singularly. But without knowing that criteria, they as you probably know, they're different all the time. If we have to pay 50% of what, and what that would be, and how that fits in with the overall plan. So that's, I think, on the grant side, Madam Mayor.
We're on your side.
Thank you.
We support you and congratulate you on all the successes you've had so far. So we wish you good luck and thank you very much.
Thank you.
Could I have a motion, please, that the delegation from North Durham Pickleball be received? Councillor McDougall, Councillor Brown, all those in favor? That's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, conscious of the time here, I will maybe hear the delegation and then have just a bit of a brief break. So please, we have Howard Danson from Town Hall Theatre, and Alyssa Smith is here as well, and talk about the theatre rehabilitation projects and grant endorsement, and it's on page 16. Welcome. The button on your mic should show red. Please go ahead, you have 5 minutes.
I think I'm on. Thank you very much for allowing our delegation, especially at such short notice. I think most of you know I'm Howard Danson, and I think most of you will probably know Alyssa Smith, who is the treasurer of the Town Hall Theatre Board, so we're representing the board here today. The purpose of our presentation is to apprise Council of our application for a grant for the Investing in Canada infrastructure program that's being offered through the federal and provincial governments, and to seek your endorsement of it. Some of you may know the history of the iconic Town Hall Theatre building that stands proudly on the corner of Queen and Simcoe Streets here in Port Perry. It served the township and business community in many ways since its construction in 1873. It's been the township office, the fire hall, a roller skating rink, a courthouse, a jail, and even a ladies' undergarment factory, among other things. In 1973, the council of the day decided to raise the building to the ground to make way for a parking lot. Fortunately for the residents of Port Perry and the arts and cultural community, a number of enterprising and forward-thinking people made an offer to lease the building for 99 years at a cost of $1 per year, and the council accepted their proposal. So over the years, several major physical additions and changes have been made with the help of generous donations from local businesses and individuals, the First Nations, the federal and provincial governments, and the township of Scugog, as well as revenue generated from the performances and the events that are held in the theatre today. The theatre is well recognized in Durham Region as a vibrant centre for the performing arts. While the building is in good condition, considering its age, it's close to 150 years now, there are parts that are in need of updating, and that's why we're applying for a grant to help us carry out a number of improvements. So the changes we are proposing will improve accessibility, generate revenue opportunities, better the conditions for patrons and performers, and meet public health standards. Our overall objective is to upgrade the ground floor facilities that comprise the patrons' lounge, the kitchen, and the green room. We need to repair the marquee over the main entrance and install a new freight and passenger elevator. And finally, we'd like to purchase some new sound equipment and refurbish the proscenium. So I'll just briefly run through what we intend to do. The kitchen does not meet today's public health regulations. We believe bringing this up to required standards and redecorating the adjacent patrons' lounge will help us market the facility to people who are wishing to hold business meetings there, private parties, smaller performances and rehearsals, and thereby increase our exposure and revenue opportunities. The green room is where performers get changed, put on their makeup, and relax before, during, and after the performances. It's also used for rehearsals and individual one-on-one instruction. This room is dated and requires modern changing and washroom facilities and other minor improvements. The marquee over the front entrance is in quite dilapidated condition and urgently requires repairing, and the window boxes that advertise current and upcoming shows need to be replaced at the same time. Purchasing the state-of-the-art sound system will benefit the performers who choose to use it instead of hauling their own sound equipment in and out of the building, because theirs is superior to what we have presently. It will also improve the sound quality for the audience. The proscenium needs to be refurbished and painted in order to provide more definition and focus to the stage. The major project will be the installation of a freight and passenger elevator. This is needed to assist with the safe movement of sound equipment and disabled performers and patrons from ground level to the auditorium and to the stage level. If we are successful in our application, the Town Hall Theatre is committed to finding the 26.7% of the total cost of these projects, which we will spread over the next 5 or 6 years as we are allowed to do according to the grant regulations. The federal and provincial governments would fund the remaining 73.3%. So why are we here? The township owns the building and the Town Hall Theatre Board manages the theatre. Under the grant regulations, the entity that owns the asset is the organization that should lead and sign off on any grant application and must receive the grant monies when they are claimed. However, we have confirmed with the province that in our circumstance, where the building is owned by the township, but the theatre is managed by the board, the Town Hall Theatre can take the lead in the grant application process as long as we have the township's endorsement. So we have discussed this situation briefly with Mr. Allor, and he has indicated, I think, that he feels we'll be able to make the financial arrangements with the township in order to accommodate those processes as long as council endorses our application. I should make it clear again that we're not asking for any funding from council. We are simply here to respectfully ask for council's endorsement of our application. We again thank you for your attention, Madam Mayor and Council, and we'll be pleased to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm just concerned about the sound equipment that was provided by Adamson a number of years ago. So is it outdated now, or is it just not working properly, or?
Oh, thank you. Actually, the system at the time that we received from Adamson's was basically, Adamson is a speaker building company, and they were so generous to supply us with appropriate speakers. What we're looking to add on to our facility is a better, more efficient digital mixing equipment, as well as better miking equipment, headset mics and things like that. We'll still be utilizing the actual speaker system that Adamson provided back in 2004.
Great, thank you. Questions? Councillor Kiesebrink, Councillor Brown?
Just wanted to say thank you. This is very exciting, and we're thrilled with the level of commitment and care that are exhibited, and excited about the amount of dedication to this grant that you've already committed, and I would be in full support of your proposal.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Brown?
Thank you, and through you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for your proposal. I have a lot of respect for Mr. Danson in particular because I know how organized you are. So hopefully that steads you well in the next pursuit of applications or grant applications and so on. I have a question for Director Heritage, if I may. May I do that?
Yes, you may.
Your Worship? Okay, I just want to, I presume that you haven't approached the Heritage Committee for a grant of any kind. Would I be correct in assuming that?
We haven't at the moment because we want to try and secure funds through this particular grant that it would be much bigger than the heritage people would be able to supply. We can tell you kind of in a ballpark the amount of money that we expect to have to pay out over the next 5, 6, 7 years. We've already started getting cost estimates for the patrons lounge and the kitchen. I can tell you, for instance, the kitchen would probably cost us $30,000, of which we would have to pay basically a quarter of that. So we want to spread these projects, the ones I've talked about, over a number of years so that we can pay our share of that annually through revenue that we generate in the building.
Subsequent, if I may, I understand it's pretty small beans compared to what you're going after. But I just wanted to know, Director Heritage, is it possible for them to apply for a grant, even if it's small, it's something, right? It helps pay for part of the kitchen, or it helps pay for the elevator, or it helps pay for, is that something that is possible, Director?
Thank you, Madam Mayor, to the councillor. The subject building is a designated heritage building. The Heritage Committee has a grant program, as you know, that would place limitations of $15,000, and that has to be matched by the applicant for any approval of grant. And it would have to be applied to, I guess, a heritage feature that's within the building. I'm not sure if you're looking at anything that's on the outside of the building, or is it all contained within the building itself?
The marquee?
The marquee
and the
marquee is the only thing on the outside of the building.
Okay.
Yes, and I believe the marquee is more of a maintenance issue with rebuilding in better materials than it is actually changing the actual design that it is at this time.
I think it still might qualify, though.
We'd still, I've spoken to the township about that, and we'd still need a permit to do it. We'd have to get the Heritage Committee's blessing
but I
to
think
do it.
but I think that it would apply for a grant. Director Heritage, would it?
Yes, Madam Mayor.
Still be applicable?
In terms of routine maintenance on a building, that would not qualify for a grant under the grant program.
We'll talk later then about some other grants we've given. So.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have Councillor Guido and then Councillor Wanton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll try my microphone again. You mentioned in your presentation regarding the marquee and how it's in, I believe it was urgent requirements to be fixed. If you're not successful with the grant, do you have funds now that you're able to repair the marquee?
Yes, we are. Yes.
You do?
Yes,
Okay.
we do have the funds available for that.
And is it a safety concern right now, or?
No, it's more of a cosmetics concern right
Okay,
now. Yes.
wonderful. All right, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wanton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just curious, are you willing or able to tell us a cost estimate for the application?
For the whole application? Well, we're actually not at the moment. We have cost estimates for the kitchen, for the patrons lounge, for the marquee, and also for some of the sound equipment. We have the original plans, the architectural plans that were drawn up when the big renovations were done in 2004. They are with an architectural firm in Oshawa at the moment, and they are going to give us a cost estimate of the green room and the elevator. And we expect that within a few days.
That's about what I expected you to say, but
I could give you a ballpark, but it would be
otherwise she would have
ballpark.
said anyway. No, that's great, and I do applaud your initiative as well, and I know with I would wish you well, and if I could, I would make a motion that we endorse this
Okay.
application.
Sorry. Okay.
I would make a motion.
We just talked about that. So are you making a motion that the delegation by Howard Danson, Town Hall Theater, and Elisa Smith be received and that the township endorse their application?
Absolutely.
Okay. Councillor Kesebrink seconds it. Any other questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much.
Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
Thank you, and good luck with the project.
Thank you.
You know it's near and dear to my heart. So that's one, and he's agreeing. Okay, maybe sorry? Beg your pardon? Okay. It's 3:30. We've been going for a couple of hours now. How about we have a 5-minute break? The delegations are finished, and we'll move to the consent agenda after that. Okay? Okay, break come back at 25:02. Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
You got better than I thought.
call the meeting back to order. Moving to the consent agenda. Everything was pulled except 9.2.4. So could I have a mover for the provincial policy statement review, our response to the draft policy revisions? Could I have a mover? Councillor Watton, Councillor Kiesebrink. Questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. 9.2.1.
Thank you, Robin.
That was easy. Thank you, Robin. 9.2.1, and Councillor Watton, you have declared a conflict on this, and Councillor Ross has pulled this item. I believe it's Councillor Ross, yes? Cartwright Sports and Recreation on page 17. Why did I pull that?
Make a motion to follow the recommendations. I don't think I meant to. My apologies.
Okay. Councillor Ross has moved the recommendations. Seconder, Councillor Kiesebrink. Questions or comments? You had a question? Go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to ask for some clarification on the actual lease, and I apologize, I wasn't ready. I was hoping Councillor Ross would have used up some time. Hang on 1 second. Yes, on page, page 19 of our council agenda, but under definition and interpretations, under 1A, it says lands, meaning the building known as Nestleton Hall and the lands known as Cartwright Fields. Can I ask for some clarification on where the trails fall under this, and if trails are included in the lands or if they're separate?
I believe they're included in the land, but
Hi.
Ms. Cornish.
Thank you. So that's an oversight, and we can amend the lease. It would be part of the lands, we think, but that they would be maintained by the Cartwright Sports and Recreation instead of the township.
Thank you, and I would support. I didn't actually figure that out, JP did. Yes, if we can amend the lease to include that clarification, that would be great. Thank you.
Thank you for pointing that out. Councillor McDougall?
Sorry, I have a quick question on the lease as well. Page 20, under number 4, when it looks at the rent, paragraph B talks about all revenues being generated are forwarded to the owner, and then paragraph C says the tenant retains all revenues. So I'm just a bit confused. Not that it really matters.
Thank you. I think, and we can make this so it's more like clarified better, but I think B is for, that has been from previous years, all your, you give me a nod if I'm wrong, from the revenues generated from the field revenues. And C has been added on because of the now the CSR is taking over the building, so the facility rentals. But
Okay, very good. That
two
answers my
different.
question.
Is that your understanding? Like for the past?
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? So who has made that motion to, Councillor Ross has made the motion, seconded by Councillor Kiesebrink. Any further questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Moving on to 9.2.2 on page 25, and Councillor Kiesebrink has pulled this. And it's the core service and efficiency review update. Councillor Kiesebrink?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I was just
Would you
wondering.
like to move it first?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll move that.
And a
Thank you.
seconder, please? Councillor Watton? Go ahead.
Mostly, I just wanted to, this is an incredible report. There's an enormous amount of work that has been done in our core services and efficiency review, and I want to commend our CAO and our incredible staff for all the work that went into to undertake this. You've identified over $600,000 in savings due to reviewing different contracts, licensing, modernizing, staff and volunteer restructuring, privatization of concessions, and so on. And also identifying savings and returning over $3 million to reserves is major, because I know in the past reserves were used and depleted, and so to see our reserves built back up again is really, really important. I want to congratulate our dedicated team whose combined efforts have brought in an overwhelming almost $5 million in grants to help with the work of this township, which is really exemplary. One question I did have is with respect to the smaller halls and the mention that these halls may need to be closed. I'm wondering if we could, before we go to that extreme, if we could perhaps invite Central Counties Tourism and our new tourism coordinator, along with Durham Tourism, to do a hall board and community leadership investment event first, and speak to all the hall board groups. I know that there's been a lot of work on the island. There's been a really motivated group of people that have been working hard to diligently make use of their historic hall. All of these halls are historic and have a lot of value for the community. As I sit on the Caesarea Hall board as well. I wonder if Central Counties Tourism, they have resources. It wouldn't probably cost the township to put on an event like this. They could help all of the groups, maybe if we bring them all together simultaneously, they could talk about how to best advertise and market their halls, how to accentuate their value, give them some pricing guidelines. I think possibly some of the pricing is antiquated and that they're maybe not maximizing the rental returns that would then support these halls. And I'm also wondering if we could do some cooperative advertising for the halls overall. The way that Scugog Tourism Site has done cooperative advertising for retail and done cooperative advertising for a bed and breakfast and accommodation and what have you, I really feel like we could do more to support these incredible halls. People love to do weddings in historic places. That's just one example. And I just wonder if we could take this step before we go to that extreme. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Kiesling. And to be fair, this has been studied for a long, long time, and they've kept accurate records on the usage and the costs and so on and so forth, and the future needs as far as like accessibility and other things. So it's not taken lightly, and there's a lot of data to support closing or not closing halls, and but that's where we are so far, and I'd ask JP to answer your questions as well.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and through you to Council. So although 5 halls have been identified, they were identified through the Parks, Recreation and Culture Master Plan, so that's why they're sort of identified here as being reviewed. Any next steps still has to come forward to Council. So there's just because they've been identified, it's not to suggest that we are closing them. They do require a next step in terms of another report to Council on how we like to proceed with those. In terms of your suggestion that we look into Central Counties, yes, absolutely we can do that. Yeah, we can look at those type of things. It is a part of my work plan to bring forward a report on these halls. Say even accept the Latcham Centre just because it's a part of a different study. And then, but yes, we can certainly look at Central Counties for doing those types of things. And then that report obviously will be requesting direction from Council, any other further steps to be taken at that time. And obviously there'll be recommendations from staff too. Yeah.
Further, just one comment. Thank you so much to our clerk and our director. I just appreciate that Central Counties in the past have, with their own resources, been of great benefit for the Scugog Township for their community tourism plan and other resources that they brought to the table that have helped to build on what we have today. And this could be a real value for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further questions on this report, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. Thank you for the report. Just looking at 2.7 under road patching, I'm just looking to see how hiring a contractor in the spring of 2019 assisted in the efficiencies of delivery for patching. It says third bullet down.
Through you, Madam Mayor. So this spring we had definitely a lot more potholes than normal, and our crews couldn't keep up with the demand. So we hired a contractor in the spring, and they focused themselves on select roads, and we were able to catch up to all the potholes through hiring them in. We have based on the class, the road class, we have a certain amount of time before we have to fill the holes in, the potholes. So part of our maintenance and our minimal maintenance is we have to achieve a certain standard in order to fill those potholes, and we couldn't do that because many times it would be raining, and then our crews would have to go back inside the trucks, and they weren't able to fill the potholes in time. But having a contractor help alleviate some of that time.
Okay.
Further, if I might, Madam Mayor, is that something we'll consider in the future as well?
Yes, it is.
And then, would that be something we could consider for something, say, like ditching?
We could look into that. Costs for ditching do increase because you're looking at a secondary grade all with trucks, more trucks. So it does get more expensive, but we could look into that.
Very good, thank you.
Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Another question for Mr. Frasca, please. In same section 2.7, is there an update on the grade all?
Yes, tender is closing tomorrow.
Perfect, thank you. So will there be an update as to a delivery date once the tender's closed?
Once the tender's closed, we will contact the vendor, and there'll be a report going forward back to council for approval. And from there, we can see what the time frame is for delivery.
Thank you.
Yes, I had the same question, so thank you very much for asking it. Councillor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question in regards to 2.3, the crossing guards. In the statement, it says the last crossing guard warrant study was undertaken in 2012. And then it reads that another one was done in 2018. I just wanted clarification on if we're looking at 2012 or 2018 that our current setup has been completed on.
Who could answer that? That be you, Mr. Frasca? Crossing guards?
Madam Mayor, I can't really speak of this. I don't know what information was used for the study. So you're
What is it
asking
exactly you're looking for?
Just clarification, if we have a study that says the last one was taken in 2012, it's far greater than the 2018. And then just, it was going to be the follow-up, but I can follow up later on and at the next meeting in regards to when the next one would be due and what changes we're looking at as far as increase or changing number of cross guards due to the traffic conditions that we have. But I didn't realize Ms. Coleman wasn't going to be
Okay,
here.
well, I think we'll get back to you on that. Is that fair enough, Mr. CEO, or do you have a?
Well, Madam Mayor, I may be able to answer some of it. The report is intended to identify the two time periods where a review of the crossing guards and whether there are new crossing guards needed was undertaken.
Mhm.
One was in 2012 and the other one was just recently, the end of last year and this year. And then the results of that are shown here. I would say that when this will be carried out next will probably be in a year or two. I mean, they were just carried out. So I guess we can look at that in the context of any new information we have through the Transportation Master Plan or Active Transportation Study that might warrant that to be brought forward earlier. But at the moment, this is just freshly done, and these decisions were made.
Okay, just to clarify, that's a township, the warrant stays township, it's not mandated by the province at all?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's right, this is a township warrant and a township study that was carried out, yes.
Is there an establishment of what the warrants, like what warrants a crossing guard is, and where is that established? Is that a provincial or our own?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yeah, we've developed our own warrant based on guidance from some best practices in other municipalities. So we have a warrant that, and I can't speak to it off the top of my head, but it does set the criteria of when a crossing guard is required and when it's not. But that warrant was used in this case, and I think even in one case, council made decisions where it didn't quite meet the warrant, but it was the right thing to do from a safety perspective.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions?
If I may, just further, page 31, section 2.10, just in regards to the revenue, states that 2017, the increase in fees and charges resulted in an increase of, it was about $98,000, which is partly due to it not being regularly updated previously. Just wondering if what we're looking at from year on year, if revenue will increase, at what rate we're looking at revenue increasing at that.
I'll start if you don't mind, Madam Mayor. This is with respect to the user fees and charges. So a process that we have in place is that we review our user fees and charges annually, and we're just in the process of doing that now to inform the budget. So when we look at the user fees and charges, we look at the cost of the service versus what we're charging. We look at what our comparable municipalities are charging. So we're kind of in that sweet spot where we're not overcharging or undercharging. And we have progressively, incrementally been increasing fees closer to that average that other municipalities charge and trying to make them as cost recovery as possible, saying that we know that a lot of recreation fees are not cost recovery, and there's a role the municipality has to pay in funding those. But for some time in the municipality, these fees were not being reviewed regularly, and I think they had eroded in terms of being much less than they could have been. So I can't say exactly what that will be, because I think we'll hit a threshold when we won't be raising the fees any higher. They'll meet that spot where their cost recovery or what in keeping with our market around us. But I just can say that it is a review process that we carry out annually, and it has resulted in increased revenue. And I know one of the objectives of council is to maximize non-tax revenue, and this is one way that you can go about doing that.
Thank you. Any further questions? Okay, thank you. And you see this. I was so impressed with this report, and I really thank staff for developing this report because, well, we're new council for one thing, and maybe it's not fully understood what has happened over the last couple of years to maximize our resources and be efficient. And I think that that staff has done tremendous work on this, and I really, really appreciate it. And this particular report is a keeper. It's something that you can refer to, and that you can refer your constituents to, with their questions. Director Valentin, did you have anything that you wanted to add to the?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just reiterate what the CAO had mentioned, that this is part of our budget process, that we do review all of our user fees and we do compare them with other area municipalities to make sure that we are being competitive and that we are maximizing the revenues that we can.
Okay, anything further? Do we have a mover and a seconder on that one? We do. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. Moving now to the 9.2.3. Councillor Kiesebrink, would you like to make the motion to adopt the GPNA and Council GPNA and PCA meeting schedule? Councillor Kiesebrink, seconded by Councillor Guido. Your question?
Madam Mayor, I only had a comment just to say thank you to Sandra and to everybody who facilitates all the meetings and everything that goes into that. There's so much behind the scenes work, and for us, as you mentioned earlier, being a new council, we just really appreciate everything that goes into that, and I just wanted to take a moment to say thank you.
We really appreciate having the early notification of next year as well, so thank you very much for that. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. Let me see, where are we now? 9.2.5, the 2020 budget survey results on page 55. And I have Councillor McDougall and Councillor Kiesebrink? Councillor, oh, who would like to make the motion? Did you have it pulled too? Okay, sorry. Okay,
I'll make the motion to move that.
okay, seconder? Councillor Brown? On the floor. I've got Councillor McDougall, Councillor Guido, and who's the other one? Go ahead, Councillor McDougall. I think it is just
Sorry,
the two,
Vincent.
just the two of them.
The first question I had was with regards to the budget survey questions. Where are the budget survey questions, or how are the budget survey questions developed?
Director Valentin?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. So it's not an easy process, actually. So I do look at various other municipalities and see what they've been doing. I do try and make this tool an education piece to the residents to inform of our challenges coming forward. And looking at other area municipalities across the province, what they're asking their residents. So I try and utilize those different components when I make up this survey.
Further?
Further, what sort of weight is given to the comments that are made at the end of this survey? If I might.
Through you, Madam
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Well, we do take everything into consideration. I think what we'll be doing is looking at the comments that we've received and see if we can put some education around some of the comments that have been made. There was one comment about when our council meetings are. You know, we do publicize them on our website and we do post them in the newspaper, but perhaps we have to look at other avenues. So if there's an opportunity to educate and take those comments and put out some more information, some communications, that's where we're going to focus our efforts.
Further, I just in reading the comments, I looked at the survey results, but I really kind of honed in on the comments, and obviously we all know that our roads are in dire straits, and I think that really showed in the comments. Specifically in terms of the rural roads, I know there was a lot of comments with regards to those. I thank you for putting together this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Guido.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have two questions. I'll get the easy one out of the way if that's possible. Question 10 is regarding the structure of the meeting. And I see that the open house versus formal presentation came back fairly close with how our residents prefer. Has there been a decision as to how this will be delivered to our residents? I only ask because previous years, we had an actual formal presentation provided by not only yourself, but from the region attended. And then I found in recent years, we changed to a different format, and maybe some residents came expecting a presentation and didn't receive it. I know myself, I felt that a presentation may be more beneficial, but is there a decision that's made?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I haven't quite made that decision yet. I have reached out to the region. Last year, there was a new director or new commissioner that came in, and because she was new to the region, she did not have time to come out to our open house. I've reached out and asked her to put the date in her calendar. So at this point, she has agreed. I know that looking at the region's budget timetable, it falls right within their area as well. So it might be a little bit of a challenge, but I'll work with them, and hopefully we can get them up for the operating budget open house in February. Looking for feedback, I guess. The reason I didn't do a presentation last year is because I'd done it twice. I'd done it here at council for the draft, and then I was going to do another one for the final presentation and budget. I just thought perhaps it was being overdone, and I had it running up on the PowerPoint, running on the screen at the budget open house.
So if I'm able to voice my preference would be a formal presentation. simply because when we're sitting in an audience and having a presentation done, sometimes it sparks a question that you may or may not have thought of if someone else is asking a similar question. I appreciate that there is also the intimacy of being able to ask individualized questions when the boards are up there, but if you're looking for feedback, my feedback is formal presentation. My next question is on section 2, page 56 of our council agenda, or 2 of 17 of the actual report. It says this year, over 200 responses were initially received. However, there were 57 submissions from a single computer that were identified as an attempt to skew the results. How do we know, first of all, that it was an attempt to skew the results? Perhaps it could have been our seniors club or someone at the library that was using that format for those that didn't have access to a computer or internet.
Through you, Madam Mayor, that was my initial assumption, and I did make some phone calls and reached out to the library, to the seniors club, to various groups to see if that indeed was the case. I'll pass it over to the manager of IT, Mr. Dubecki. He was the one that actually brought it to my attention. I was reviewing the results every day. I'm very excited with the responses that were coming forward, but Mr. Dubecki had been analyzing the data going forward, and he brought this to my attention, so I'll let him speak to this.
Adam, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, to council. So on the 57 records that were removed, there were 4 kind of criteria that combined formed kind of this big red flag. So the first thing is that they were all received from the same location. The second one, that they were all completed sequentially very quickly. So each survey was only completed in about a minute and 15 seconds, and then 20 seconds later another one had been started. So it was very condensed. It was actually, these 57 entries were the fastest out of all the entries we received. They were even faster than the paper copies that we received and then manually entered. And then the last kind of red flag criteria is that all the answers in all of these surveys were extremely similar, with only a very small amount of variation between them.
Thank you. Further, if I may, so we're not able to track an IP address to understand if it's from the same resident or library or, sorry, your microphone has to be off while thank you, manager of IT. We're not able to determine, I just worry that while, yes, it's suspicious that the answers are very, very similar, I would hate to rule off the fact that perhaps our residents at West Shore, for example, or Ash Street Apartments filled out a paper copy and then someone was just familiar enough with where the blocks needed to be populated based on their answers.
Please go ahead.
Through you, Madam Mayor. It was by IP address that we were able to see that all the entries were done by the same location. And SurveyMonkey actually has kind of a pseudo lock based on IP. So one person at one location should only be able to submit it once. It should not allow it to be submitted again from the same location. So they would have had to been, I'm not actually 100% sure how. I know there are ways to kind of circumvent it because it is just a soft lock versus a hard lock, but they would have to do something to kind of get around that. I mean, it is possible, but just based on what I've seen and my experience at my previous job, I used to do a lot of data analysis, and it doesn't seem likely.
Thank you. No further questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? Councillor Brown?
I have a host, and thank you, Madam Mayor. And through you, I've got a bunch. I'll try to be brief, but hopefully these are 1 or 2 word answers. I don't know. What are the chances? This is 2.2.2, the OMPF. We got 1 million plus in 2019. What are the chances that we get that cut? Do we have Any idea?
You're on the next report.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah, we're doing the budget survey results.
Okay, I apologize then.
Okay, no questions?
No.
Get you next time. Okay. Counselor Ross?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just probably directed towards Mr. DeBecke is talking about the soft lock that you're talking about. Is there a way to, if you have a residence that has 2 or more people that use the same computer because of the same IP address, that person's not using a VPN account, you can't have 2 surveys come in. Is there a way in the future to get by in case 2 people in the house have differing opinions?
Through you, Madam Mayor. I believe the way it works, I would have to go back and test this, but I'm pretty sure it's on a, it's most likely a cookie that actually just drops to say, don't allow this device. So if they had an iPad and a laptop, they could do both devices. But again, I would have to kind of go back and double check just to make sure that is the case.
Okay, so just for in the future, if we have a communal computer, whether it's at the library or it's at a senior's residence or something, perhaps we can look into that for the next budget round or next surveys. I know in my house it was, you could send one, and thankfully I got it first. But, and then it's locked, and you know, I know enough about cookies, but there's a lot of people who don't know how to delete cookies or go around. The other thing is, in regards to the demographics questions, understanding that surveys have a self-selection bias in them when we're looking at statistics, and when we're looking at them for making decisions, that in the future, is it possible to have more demographic identifiers so we can see who we're talking to and which subset we're actually missing as far as their responses?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, absolutely.
Good idea. Good idea. Yeah. Anything else? Thank you. Anything further? Okay, we have a mover and a seconder, Councillor McDougall and Councillor Brown. All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Now the biggie. And it's 9.2.6 on page 84, the 2020 budget guideline and council target rate. And may I have a mover, please? Councillor Watton, Councillor Kieserbrink, and Councillor Kieserbrink, you had a question.
I don't know if this is possible, but I'll just say it. I would like to make a motion that keeps the proposed levies, which would go 100% towards the intended critical infrastructure deficits, but keep the budget to a 0% increase. And I don't make this motion out of non-confidence, but rather great confidence for our incredible team. I do have great respect for our experienced and talented staff, led by our CAO, who has demonstrated efficiencies and excellence in performance throughout his time with us. Our Scugog Township's previous strategic report and our staff have demonstrated many efficiencies, such as were illustrated in our core reviews, which we've just heard, and previously eliminating $809,849 in transfers from reserves to offset tax levy. You guys have improved financial accountability by departments, implemented new software that talks to each other, so that we can review departments and question and fix anomalies. We've successfully received many funding applications, and we're in the middle of one. Here's my concern. For retirees and seniors on fixed incomes who are working to stay in their homes, 1.9% inflation doesn't equate to a 1.9% increase in their budget. It means that their dollar is 1.9% less buying power than it was prior. But on the other side of the coin, property owners recognize that increased property value and less spending on vehicle maintenance and heightened public safety are the important results of properly maintained roads. So there's our dichotomy. So in the spirit of achieving some kind of balance between the facts of our $190 million deficit for roads and the need of equipment and facilities, but at the same time, this critical peak that our taxes have reached in our township, I'm just wondering if we can say yes to levies, but no to increasing our budget, and see if we can find a way. We've discovered all of these efficiencies already. Can we find a way to just work with that same budget? So in summary, to our esteemed Director Valentin, I realize that this ask may be an impossible task, and I realize that we're already working with a budget where 79% is already allocated to roads. So I do ask this with great respect towards you, and I would just like to appeal to our talented staff to see if this might be possible, to find a way to somehow work within our budget numbers. Thank you for listening.
Councillor Kiesebrink, it sounds like you're making an amendment to the motion, and I need to know the wording of the amendment.
The amendment would be for everything to be the same except to to not have the budget increase the 1.9% for inflation. That's the only change.
So you're suggesting that the 3% levy for the roads and the, is that 1%, 0.5 and 0.5 be in place, but to do without. So you realize that, I shouldn't enter it into the debate, but the 1.9 is basically to keep everything the same. Okay, you understand that, okay. All right, to the amendment, do I have anybody that, oh, seconder for the amendment? Councillor Watton, are you seconding the amendment? Okay. No. Okay. They've already made the motion. They made the motion for the, on the original recommendation, right?
Yeah, but I think what they meant to do was make this motion.
No. No, they made the motion and immediately Councillor Kiesebrink made an amendment. Okay, so Councillor Watton, you're seconding the amendment in order to get it on the floor. Okay? Go ahead.
If I might, Madam Mayor, I would just like our director to comment on the motion that Councillor Kiesebrink has put forward.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I think it would be very difficult, knowing that the CPI is not, the consumer price index that I've posted here is the household consumer price index. So it's a different basket of goods that are utilized for that statistic versus what the municipality, our expenditures are. We have collective agreements that are in place, which are at 1.7% for salaries, which then you have increases to the benefits, which are also part of the collective agreements, which are not going to stay static. So if you are requesting that we stay within the same budget envelope, then money has to be taken from elsewhere within the budget to accommodate those things. I know this year the gravel tender that went out through the Durham Purchasing Cooperative came back 44% above last year's budget. So I know our staff are looking to retender that for ourselves, but again, that's significantly higher than 1.9%. So I think it would be very challenging to, I think it's going to be challenging at 1.9%, but I think it would be even more challenging to get us in to stay static. You'd be moving, shuffling things away and perhaps decreasing levels of service that you're currently used to.
So we would be cutting services, in other words?
Maybe not cutting them, but decreasing the level of service that residents are expecting right now.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Mr. CAO?
Just wanted to, Madam Mayor, just quantify it. So 1.9% is probably a little bit over $250,000 from the budget. And we do a line-by-line review, and we've been successful in finding efficiencies, but that would be a big task. I'd have to agree with the treasurer. The result would be a reduction in service in some area. And if that's what council decides, we'll bring back those reductions when we come back.
Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, this may be an unfair question, Director, I hope it isn't, but $250,000, if I understand correctly, more or less. So what does that mean to the average taxpayer? What does 1.9% mean? Increase, decrease, whatever?
Through you, Madam Mayor, so a 2% change would be about $26 per year in the average household.
And the average household subsequent, the average household's around, what did you figure, $450,000?
$417,800 based on last year's CVA.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Councillor Watton?
Yep, I've forgotten.
Pardon?
I've forgotten.
Okay, Councillor Ross? I'll come back to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I came early in today, and spoke with Director Valentin in order, I had the idea of, at present, I believe, as it's very evident, I think with everybody, that our tax base is mainly residential, and they are being pushed in difficult means. And to your point, Councillor, that you have people on fixed incomes who, I went door to door and tried to chat to these people, and you walk through the door and you can tell that they don't have $40 a month to give to people, and find out where they are. But I also understand that we have roads to take care of, and we have our legal responsibilities. And so when I came in to see what can we do to to continue with what people have identified as the priorities, being roads, and then staff identifying equipment and buildings, to maintain those, but to lessen the load on the taxpayer, and for the township to find, I use efficiencies, I can't find a better word for it, but it's not the word I want, efficiencies and cutbacks to divert to roads. So in the case of 1%, which is $122,000 plus some change. So if we were to reduce our, either the consumer price index or, sorry, our contribution on that part, or the roads by a percentage, so that we fall under the 5% that we're pushing towards our taxpayers, but then we put it on us to approve a budget that finds savings of that 1% that staff have recommended. It's just my thoughts.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? So we're voting on, oh, Councillor McDougall?
Yes, please. Thank you, Madam Mayor. Question through you, Madam Mayor, for Director Valentine. What is the total tax rate that we're looking for, the budget target currently?
Through you, Madam Mayor, sorry, but what tax rate?
Or sorry, what is the budget target we're looking for total right now? I think I see it in bits and pieces, but I'm not sure of the total rate.
So if you add all of the percentages up, it's 5.9%.
So we're looking for 5.9%.
Which equates to about $77 a year for the average resident.
If I might, through you further, Madam Mayor. Is CPI basically inflation?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes. So we look at the year over year. So I have, the most recent that I have is August 2018 to August 2019.
Further through you, Madam Mayor. If we have $190 million in road deficits now, is it fair to assume that next year we will have that times 1.9% in road deficit?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I can't speak to that. It depends on the weather conditions and the deterioration of the roads. It depends how much money we can invest into our roads. Depends on a lot of different factors.
So further through you, Madam Mayor. So basically, if we can hold our own, it's still reasonable to assume that that deficit should increase monetarily at the rate of inflation.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I'll just go back to the State of the Infrastructure report that came forward, that basically the consultant there had identified the need of the township putting funds towards the roads. And he recommended 3% per year for the next 10 years to get us to an acceptable level within 25 years. So.
And if I might, we began special road levies in 2014.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
And were those at the recommendation of the roads consultant then?
Through you, Madam Mayor, I believe so. As well as the asset management plan that was done in 2017 also recommended that.
And we've still moved up in our roads needs.
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Actually, that 1% was added earlier, but it wasn't put in a reserve. It was dealt with like it was used up every year. So it was about 2012 that the 1% started, and it was we started it because the province basically said, if you don't have a plan, then you're not going to get grants. Basically, that was it. But it was a good idea to actually start a reserve fund and build it from there. So, and that started in 2014 or 15, whatever. Yeah. Councillor, anything further? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
You remember?
And I really would be surprised if anyone that actually owned a home in Scugog's home value was $417,000. That figure, I realize we don't come up with that figure, but that really irks me that that's what's used as the average home, because it truly, I'm sure those of us sitting on council do not have a home with that value. Councillor Kiesebrink, I 100% empathize with what your statement was. However, I don't know if a 0% tax increase is a realistic target for us, given what our services may have to sacrifice. That being said, I do think that perhaps we can think of perhaps a more creative approach at this percentage-wise. Perhaps rather than 0.5%, then we entertain 0.25% for the special levy for facilities and vehicles. So most municipalities that have done 0% end up having to, in future years, figure out how to recover those years of I neglect the incorrect word, but those years where the tax increase has not occurred. But I 100% agree that there is a concern there.
Councillor Watton and then Councillor Kiesebrink. Oh, and Councillor Ross.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through you to the director again, if we were to consider a 2% levy for the roads, what does that essentially mean in the big picture? So it was 10 years, 3% at 10 years to bring us to a maintenance, a well-maintained kind of catch-up. I don't exactly. If we only agreed to a 2%, how much longer would it take? Would it be double? Or would it be 5 years, or would it be like, oh my gosh, 20 years? Or
through you, Madam Mayor,
any idea?
I don't have any idea. I'm just looking to the Public Works folks here.
Kevin Arsenal has he's looking after that type of thing, so I'll ask you to comment, please.
Through you, Madam Mayor, currently with 3% levy, it essentially doubles our projects over the 5 years. If we look at cutting that to 2%, you're looking at halving that doubling effect. We lose a lot of the big rural projects because we get into that phasing type thing that we hate, and the efficiencies that we lose there. I would suspect that 10 years becomes 20, if not 21, 22.
Councillor Kiesebrink.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
We are speaking to the amendment.
Thank you. Yeah. May I amend my amendment to 1% instead of 1.9, so we can keep the total combined effect to 5. I just want to find that balance.
May I suggest that you come up with a total figure?
5, not 5.9.
5.
Yeah.
So you're amending your motion. So I have to ask the seconder if she's willing to amend the amendment. Okay, so we'll put that on the floor. Am I doing that correctly?
Yeah,
Mr. Clerk?
Yep.
Okay. So now the amendment reads that the budget target should be 5%. Yeah. And staff would figure out how, okay. It's 5.9 in the original motion, and it's now the amendment says 5. Yes, please.
Madam Mayor, if I may, through you to Council, Can I just confirm with the mover and the seconder that your proposal is the 1.9% be 1% instead? Is that what you just amended?
I don't want to mess with the 3% road levy. I really feel like we've heard very resoundingly from our budget survey. So I would like to leave it with staff that we leave that 3% because we're in a critical state, and look for their direction for the rest. But just to keep it at the 5 is really what I'd like to see.
Is that enough direction to staff? Like, would staff want to adjust the other figures, or do you want to keep the 1.9 and adjust the other percentages?
I do need some direction to work on our capital budget. So if 3% and 0.5 and 0.5 is what is taken, then it would have to come back from the CPI, which then you would likely decrease service based on the expenditures that I know that are coming forward. The other thing that you can do is take the roads down to 2%.
Or the 0.5s down?
I would strongly recommend the 0.5 for the vehicle and 0.5 for the building, based on the needs that are coming forward. There will be a fleet replacement program coming forward. I've seen a draft of it, and it's significant in some of our large vehicles. So I do feel that we need money being directed to those areas as well.
Yeah, I'm suggesting that maybe that is, we have to make the hard decision on what it is that we want to cut, rather than, so are you suggesting, Councillor Kiesebrink, that you reduce it to 0.9 and the others remaining the same at 3%, 0.5 and 0.5?
Madam Mayor, that would leave the hard decision with the 1% being our budget target instead of 1.9, 1%, and then keeping the levies as they are, if that's what our director is advising, which.
Okay, I'm not sure where we're going to go with this. Mr. Clerk? You wanted to do 1.9 to 1, is that it? Okay. Yeah. Okay, so your amendment is actually saying that the budget target of 1.9 be 1 point, plus a 3% special levy dedicated to roads and other infrastructure, a 0.5 special levy dedicated to vehicles and equipment, and a 0.5 special levy dedicated to building and facilities be approved. That's your motion, your amendment? Okay. Seconder? You're okay with that? Okay. Everybody understand? Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think we're faced with having to make a decision which we may not understand the ripple effect if we make it hastily right now. I think the idea of taxation is very important, and I don't think it should be rushed. While I appreciate timelines, is there any way that we can be apprised of what a reduction would look like before we vote? Because I don't think it's fair to residents to vote to potentially reduce services when we don't know what those services are that we may be reducing. I 100% agree that 5.9 or 6%, however you look at it, is an insanely high tax percentage to be presenting to our residents. But I would like to understand prior to that what that would look like if we do cut it.
Mr. CAO, you want to speak?
Yes, Madam Mayor, excuse me, and thank you. This is a budget target, so council's just giving staff direction on what to work towards with respect to the budget. We would do a line-by-line review, do our best to try to make that 1% target, and if it wasn't possible without service cuts, we would bring those cuts back to council, and then ultimately council could decide whether they are you want to continue with those, service reductions if needed after the review, or whether you wanted to increase up to save those service reductions. You will have an opportunity. It won't be just comp plans. This is it. And we would try our best to come close or deliver on council's ask.
So in other words, this is just the target, and staff will come back with how that would look on our services, and then we have the opportunity to adjust afterwards. Councilor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. So long as we have that opportunity, because I really would like to see what areas would be reduced before we make that determination.
And if I could, Madam Mayor, there is a draft budget that does come back to council. And of course, all councillors are invited during the process to, ask questions of staff, meet with staff. I know the director extends an invitation to each of you to meet with her to talk about the budget. And after we've had some time to look at the budget, she'll be able to give you an indication when you meet with her, how we're doing and what impact, if any, that might be. And we this year will be, for the new council members, of course, the budget's broken into two parts. So we'll come forward first with the capital budget, and then we'll come forward in March timeline with the operating budget. So along that way, you'll see the capital, and then we'll start to get an idea of what's needed to meet the target for the operating. If I could, Madam Mayor, just one more thing. I just want council to know that we haven't come forward with this recommendation lightly. We've heard, as council have, the need for the roads at 3%. We also have tremendous deficiencies in our buildings and our vehicles. So goes the 0.5%, which is less than what's really required, but at least helps us maintain, work towards a reserve in those areas that can address our needs. And the CPI is the CPI, and it will be a challenge, but I think everyone knows we're all working towards the same thing. We understand the pressures and the effect and what the taxpayers can handle at this rate. It's just an unfortunate situation that we're in at this time.
Okay, Councillor Ross, or are you finished, Councillor Guido? Okay, thank you, good points. Councillor Ross?
Thank you. Just a question. If we're looking at alleviating the amount of tax towards the taxpayer and looking at finding efficiencies and reductions in service, is reducing the 1.9% that's CPI, is that the best way to do it? Or is it, like, if we need to force the questions that we ask as to what we're doing, we only have so much money. The taxpayers are only willing to pay so much, so we have to look at a reduction somewhere. Is that the spot where we should reduce it, or should it be reduced in other areas?
Through Madam Mayor, sorry, what was the last part of your question?
Is that the spot where it should be reduced, or should we be reducing, the special levy? Is my question as to the amendment. Is that the right spot for the reduction? Is at the 1.9% in order to pretty much force our hand to make the decisions as which services stay and go, or should it be the special levies that are reduced?
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor. That's a very good question. I do feel the need as well, talking with our Public Works and hearing from the community the need for the roads, and knowing that our vehicles that support our roads are in desperate need of repair as well. I would suggest yes, then that the CPI, if you're going to reduce it, would likely be there. What we can do is we will do a bottom-up approach and look at every service that we're doing and every line item, and we'll look at the revenues as well to see if there's maybe opportunities there that we can increase the user fees a little bit more, fees and charges, to help offset that as well.
Councillor McDougall?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just being a new councillor, and we went through a budget process last year, but it was everything together. If Scugog was in different shape, and let's say our roads needs was, say, $40 million, and our vehicles weren't quite as in dire straits as they are, what would this process look like? Would we just be looking at a budget target of, say, 1.9%? Would we need the special levies? How would that look? I know that's kind of pie in the sky, but I'm just trying to get my head around that.
Through you, Madam Mayor. I don't know that we need special levies, but I would, from my past experience, would suggest that there should be budget allocations out of the tax levy to the reserves. In reviewing the region's agenda that's coming forward this week, there's significant amount of information on their reserves and the amount of allocated funds from the tax levy that go into their reserves. So that is a best practice. When we get to where we need to be, that there's sufficient funding going to the reserves, then we wouldn't need a special levy anymore. And we would monitor that every year, actually, as we come forward through the budget process.
Further, I just wanted to echo the concern that in taking out of the budget target, I don't know if that's the best. If if reducing the roads levy to 2.8% and the specials levies to 0.35 each of them, or coming up with some combination to bring it down is better than pulling all out of the budget target. I mean, all options are on the table as far as I'm concerned.
Any further,
Through you, Madam Mayor.
Councillor Brown.
That's okay, thank you.
Long day.
Director, I'm not sure if you can answer this one either, but we're looking at least a 5% tax increase. That's what people are going to say, 5 or 6, to allude to Councillor Guido. So if we reduce that, fine, but when was the last time we had an increase of something like 5% in taxes? What has it been over the past few years? And I don't know how far back you can go.
I have a good short-term memory, but I believe last year was 3.84. We had a special levy. My mind is not going back to the year before. We had a 2% special levy for roads that year. So I believe it was over 4. I can't speak to before that.
So I'm just thinking, if I'm a taxpayer and I'm looking at the last 3 or 4 years, I'm looking at least a 10% tax increase over the last 3 or 4 years. Would that be accurate?
Dear Madam Mayor, collectively, yes.
Thank you.
Any further questions on the amendment or comments? Okay, to the amendment. The amendment now reads that a budget target, it's what's here, except instead of 1.9, it's 1% for the target, the first number. Mr. CAO?
Madam Mayor, if I could, I just wanted to make sure council were agreeable with the 3% for the capital budget. We've already started to do the long-range forecast, which is the next 4 years. So you have the 2020 and then the next 4 years of the capital budget. And that today, the work that we've done is we've, in keeping with the infrastructure report, we've applied 3% for each of those years to build that long-range capital forecast. And I just wanted to make sure council were aware of that, and that's the way we're proceeding. And if council wants something different in that regard, then now's the time to tell us. Otherwise, you'll see a capital budget of what's decided here today. It looks like 3% for roads, and then you'll see the next 4 years built on a continual 3% increase in accordance with that State of the Infrastructure report. And council's not making a decision to fund those latter 4 years, but you are agreeing that that's the forecast. It will be public, and it will show the improvements that are being made. And I know that Mr. Arsenal is here today. If you want some information on that, has pretty much got that in a draft form, because we've been working on this for some time. He'll be able to tell you what that does in terms of additional projects and additional dollars over that additional 4-year period. And if that direction is otherwise, we should know that today also. Sorry, but it's a lot of work, and you wouldn't want it back if you're not in agreement with that.
Councillor Ross?
Thank you, CAO. I think there's a big portion of that is managing the public's expectations as to what's going forward. And so if we're looking at 3%, I personally am not overly comfortable with 3% over and over for the next 10 years as we've brought forward, simply because we're having a difficult time now with, as Councillor Brown said, 10% over the last 5 years, half decade, and now I'm talking about 5%. Can we build a forecast that has a 0% levy, and then at this time next year when we're sitting in these seats, if we decide to do 3%, how would that look? Would it be additional projects are then added at that time? Again, with the idea of managing expectations as opposed to promising too much.
That's a good question, and the purpose of one of the main purposes of a long-range forecast is to plan appropriately, right? It's long-range planning. How projects fit together, prioritize them. So I would not recommend a zero road levy increase for those 4 years. I mean, the budget will be so slim and so sparse that we won't be able to properly plan of where we're going. So my recommendation would be there should be a decision made for at least X% to be in the forecast. If council's not comfortable with the 3%, that's why we're asking, then what should we build into the budget? Is it 1%? Is it 2%? There should, to get to where we want to go and to plan properly for improvements to the much needed road infrastructure, there needs to be a road levy increase over the 4-year forecast, and we need to plan for it.
Just a follow-up to that, just to confirm, the impetus for the 3% change from a 1% was the roads need study that was done. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Mayor. Yes, the state of the infrastructure report that was carried out is the most current and up-to-date data we have, and it's recommending, it recommends actually an immediate over $3 million addition to the road infrastructure works, right, like starting in 2020. Working with the consultant we hired and staff, we know that's not possible. So how do we get to where we want to be, where we're building the road network in a reasonable manner? And then the 3% over 10 years was factored in, and we could get there over the long term doing that rather than boom doing it tomorrow. So of course, as mentioned, if the percentage is less, then it's just a longer time to get there. But we have to recognize at the staff level, and I'm hoping at the council level, that delays in adding those funds to the budget will result in the road network improving at a slower pace. We're still going to get complaints from the public, and I don't know about you, but I'm at the point where the complaints from the public and the increase for the tax are I'd like to see the roads fixed. As you know, I get the complaints first and foremost, and it's out there and it's real. And we all, like I say, we're all on the same page. We want to see the roads improved. We're not getting the funding that we're hoping to get through the province or federal government, and it's being left to us to do this on our own.
Councillor McDougall? Oh, I'm sorry, you finished, Councillor Ross? Okay. Councillor McDougall?
Given that we're giving specific direction to the numbers in this report, I'd like to offer a friendly amendment, which would be 2.7% towards roads, 1.7 towards a budget target, 0.3 towards each of the special levies, to give a total of 5.
That's not a friendly amendment. That's
Okay.
changing the amendment. Yeah, we have to deal with this first.
Okay.
Okay,
Very good.
and then you're welcome to make an amendment. Okay. Anything else on the amendment? So right now, Councillor Watton?
So just to be clear, if we reduce the 3% to 2%, given that it will, probably double our timeline to fix our roads. And in the interim, those roads will continue to get worse. So that 1% will be much harder to recover as we go along.
You're talking about
to
the-
keep up, to keep the maintenance of the roads. Like, to me, it's kind of a catch-22. Like, if we're going to not fix the roads, and we're gonna reduce it, then those roads are just gonna get worse, no matter what. And we won't be able to, and ultimately, probably cost more
Yeah.
to fix. So we would not.
But right
begin.
now, we're just dealing with the amendment that says the budget target of 1.9 is changing to the budget target of 1%. And then if the
I
other
understand
amendment
that.
comes forward,
I just want to be clear before I vote on that,
okay,
that I have the other part correct. Thank you.
okay, all right. So anything further on the amendment that amends the 1.9 to 1? That's all it's doing at this point. Just the amendment, that's all we're doing at this point. Then we'll do the amended motion after that, which would, if this motion passes, the amendment passes, the new motion would read that a budget target of 1% plus a 3% special levy dedicated to roads and the 0.5 and the 0.5. Councillor Keisebring.
So in summary, Madam Mayor, basically all we're doing is asking our incredible staff to just look at it as a target to see if it's possible.
This is a target, yes.
To do this and keep it to 1%, and just let us know what that picture looks like.
Yes. Okay. So right now, it's just the amendment on the 1.9 to 1, okay? To that amendment, all those in favor? Okay, that is carried. Okay, now the motion reads, the amended motion reads that a budget target of 1% plus a 3% special levy dedicated to roads and other infrastructure, of 0.5% special levy dedicated to vehicles and equipment, and a 0.5% special levy dedicated to building and facilities be approved. That's what the motion reads now. Where the CAO is probably looking for an amendment to have a dedicated 3% over the next 4 years.
Madam Mayor, incorporated into the long-range capital forecast.
Yeah, forecast.
Yes, from 2021 to 2024.
Okay. So that is an amendment, I believe, that is requested by staff.
Yes.
And then Councillor McDougall also has something. Councillor Watton.
Can we approve something like that over past 1 year?
It's just to go to the forecast.
It's a forecast.
It's just a forecast.
But, right, so it just goes to a forecast, so we're not saying for sure
No,
that
we
it
would
will
vote
be
on it
that
again next year.
forever. It's just to give us a look at what
could
those next 4 years could happen.
Right.
Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Director Valentin?
Yeah, just for clarification, what we're looking for is just some, we build in assumptions into our capital budget, into the forecast, and it's a funded forecast. So building in those assumptions as to what council may approve in the subsequent years. If it's not going to be 3%, then it would be beneficial to us to put the accurate or the better number in so that we're not leading the public down a path that won't happen. So by building expectations, if we build in 3% going forward, there are several more projects that will be available to be done. However, if that's not realistic, then we shouldn't put those projects in.
So further, if I may, Madam Mayor, so if we okay that today and then next year we go no, you'll be able to tell us, well, that means we have to cut out this project and this project. Is that
That's right.
for
Through you, Madam
clarity?
Mayor, yes, that's right.
Thank you.
So it's just to deal with the capital forecast. Councillor Guido?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. But wouldn't that be setting expectations as well by having the 3% in there? Like, so if we set the someone else's microphone's on. If we set the expectation that we are going to build in the 3% over 4 years, then the residents would have that expectation that it's there. So either way, the expectation is being delivered, whether we don't have it or we do, right?
Well, through you, Madam
So
Mayor.
I guess what I'm trying to say is, you're gonna build your forecast with the 3% in, and then next year, we decide, no, we're not going to include the extra 3%. We've already set the expectation to the residents, so from a customer satisfaction perspective, now we're saying that road or project, we're now taking that away. So doesn't that set us up for potential, yes, criticism if we're building it in, yet we don't know what might face us next year or 2 years down the road, or a new term of council, what will face them. But we've already pretty much, well, by putting it in the forecast, we're setting the expectation.
Director?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So then we just need to know, would you rather us put in a 1% or a 0%? And then we'll just show you the picture of what we can afford to do within that time frame.
I think we should always live within our means. So right now, we understand what 2020 is gonna look like, but it's difficult to understand what our status will be in 2021. So to build in the expectation of 3%, in my opinion, for future, may be difficult when we don't know what 2 years from now other demands are.
Mr. CAO?
If I could, Madam Mayor, the past long-range capital forecasts have incorporated that percentage.
The one?
Not 3, but have incorporated the percentage that was approved for the given year. So it's been built in, into the budget, and again, it's a forecast. Yes, you are setting the framework, but it does allow for proper planning. And but I guess as you're saying, if council feels now that 3% isn't something that would be supported over the 4-year time period, what would be? We're highly recommending a levy increase be incorporated into the long-range capital forecast. Without that, it's really not going to be a forecast that's reflective of our needs in any way. And keep in mind that in the past with the township, the forecast was a wish list, and the wish list wasn't tied to any funding. Now we've tied it to funding, so it's real if the funding is going to be real, or we have a good idea that that's what the funding might be. You're uncomfortable with the 3%, more comfortable with 1.5 or 2, we should incorporate a levy increase. The municipality needs to have that over time. And we just want to make sure we bring back, we don't do a lot of work and bring back something that council's not going to be satisfied with.
Anything further, Councilor Guido?
I guess then, why was it not included in the initial recommendation so that we could have had a few days to consider the significance of endorsing or supporting this?
Through the mayor, can't speak for Councilor Valentine, but I know myself, it was,
Director.
pardon me, Director Valentine. I did say
Okay, that's my
Councilor.
mistake
You've done
usually.
that before, so I don't feel so bad. She doesn't want to be Councilor. I know that when I was reading the report, I took it as a given that that's what was intended, but upon reflecting on the recommendation, it would have been better to be more specific and clear on that, yes.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. I do recall when we did approve the 3% a few weeks ago or a month ago, however long it was, not word for word, but that it would be brought back every year for consideration, the 3%. So it was never my assumption that the 3% would be a given from now until eternity. It would be every year it would come to us. Yes, that it would be brought back, but not that we'd be voting on including 3% for the forecast.
Just if I could, Madam Mayor, I just want to be clear. You don't approve the forecast from the perspective of this is what's going to happen. On a year-to-year basis, the forecast is revisited. You're just approving for funding the capital budget for the given year. This other forecast is intended to allow, again, for proper planning for how we get to where we want to be, and it's an indicator of how the roads can be, the roads and other capital matters can be planned for over that time period. We actually do a 10-year behind the scenes, so in the 5 years, what comes to council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. If I just may just add one final comment, I fully appreciate what proper planning does. However, it also sets up the council to have to make the decision of removing something that was planned in the future that we hadn't necessarily committed to. So it makes it difficult for council to take something away once it's been on a forecast. That's all.
Thank you. Councillor Keys-Brink, Councillor Brown.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I think the flip side of that, and it is really difficult, is that if people don't see, well, at least my road is going to be planned for 2 years away or 3 years away, that's also discouraging to not see a forecast either. So it is a conundrum that we face where we want to be fiscally responsible. We do need to have good planning. Some of these projects are large, require more funds than others, and require multi-stage aspects. So I guess I come back to just one question, and that is, again, all you're asking us, Mr. CAO, is for approval to create targets based on 3% for 4 years. It's, again, not approving it in advance. It's saying this is what it could look like if we were to continue in this vein of thinking of, as per the recommendation of the Roads Needs Study, this is what it could look like. Is that what you're asking? And my second question is, are you asking for 3% this year and another 3% next year, so 6% next year for roads, or is it just to maintain that 3% again next year? Is that would be a clarification I would like to know.
Through the mayor, thank you for that question. Yes, so it is a target. So is giving staff direction to bring back a forecast with a 3% target each of the 4 years of the forecast. So it'd be 3% in 2021, 3% in 2022. And then the road works that come out of that would be built on that percentage. And yes, and then in the given year, council can decide to do otherwise. In fact, you probably noticed there are changes in any event to the forecast from year to year, just by virtue of some needs change, conditions of road change, funding changes. So it's not uncommon to change the forecast somewhat.
Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the short strokes on this, when it comes to the levy, is it's 3%. Either we fix the roads or we don't. Because what I'm hearing is, if you go to 2%, you're not even going to be able to properly maintain the roads that we have now and take on additional projects. Would I be correct in assuming that? It's either 3 or get off the pot.
Through you, Madam Mayor, I think 2% would also help, but you wouldn't get to the level that we need to get at to bring all of our roads to an acceptable level over the 25 years.
Okay.
It would just take longer.
I'm sorry. And subsequent to that, and I don't know whether this is worth considering or not, but I'll throw it out there. We had $1,264,500 in 2019 OMPF funding. We're not guaranteed that in the future. I think 2020 is it. Do I understand that right? And then after that, who knows?
Through you, Madam Mayor, that's correct. So the provincial government is reviewing that grant program. So we've been advised 2019 and 2020 amounts, the allocation amounts are still valid, that we will get that, but they're being reviewed for 2021.
And what percentage of the budget is that? Roughly?
10%.
10%. Thank you.
Yes. Okay, Councillor Ross?
Just 2 points. One, to be clear, you're looking for a third recommendation as for the forecast. Is that correct? Okay.
No, we want an amendment. We need a mover for that
Okay.
proposal.
And just before I do that, I just want to speak to Councillor Brown's point that if we lose that funding, then in 2 years from now, we're having problems with 5 versus 6, then we're looking at much bigger numbers. I feel far more comfortable saying to my constituents, yeah, hey, surprise, we had a forecast for 1% and we decided on 3%, your roads coming up, as opposed to saying, sorry, 3%, we have a lot of more other stuff coming on due to funding issues. We were unable to fund a levy for roads, or the road had to be dropped down to 1 because of the grand picture. So in saying that, I would like to make an amendment that future forecasts be based on a 1% road levy going forward.
1%.
What, 1%? With knowing that this time next year, we can always up it if we see how things play out going ahead, but erring on the side of caution as opposed to promising more than we can perhaps deliver.
Okay, so the amendment is on the table. Do I have a seconder?
Mr. Arsenal, speak.
Oh, would you like to comment on that, Mr. Arsenault?
If I could, Madam Mayor, just looking at the current 5-year forecasts, 3% is very underwhelming in 2020. It gathers steam. So having a 1% increase for the forecast will look just like the current 5-year forecast. So that's my only caution.
If I just speak to that, I think that's what I'm getting at though, is that it's what we've been running on for last year, going ahead, and that's what people have seen, and being able to say, hey, your road, Portview Row is in 3 years, or you're not on the 5-year forecast. I'm just listening to the conversation we've had where we're moving it down, we're ignoring the 1.9 CPI increase to lower it down to something that we find acceptable for the constituents. If we're promising year after year 3%, but CPI next year is above 2, and we've lost grants, you know, this perfect storm kind of scenario, but we can always, this time next year, say, hey, we're in a good position. I'm sure we'll bring this report back up and say, the state of the infrastructure report said 3%. That's what we need to raise it to. The public's willing to swallow that.
There's an amendment being made. I need a seconder for that amendment. Will you second it? Okay, so that's a 1% special roads levy be built into the 4-year 2021 to 2024 capital forecast. You would like to speak to that?
I have a question. Thank you, Madam Mayor. To Kevin, I apologize because I don't have all the titles in my mind. Sir, how about that? What would be more, from your perspective, from the standpoint of the work that goes into doing the forecasting and planning for projects for roads, what's the better way to look at it? Is it better for us to plan for 3% and put those savings and everything into place and put the projects into place, but then if the resources, if we find out that we don't get the gas tax funding or what have you, cut it at that point and make decisions at that point? Or is it better to plan for a more conservative 1% and then add funding all of a sudden? Like, because we're not the experts with respect to the roads dynamics. Can you speak to because both are viable solutions, but they may not be viable from the perspective of where you sit. Maybe you could help educate us a little bit on that process.
Through you, Madam Mayor, it becomes very difficult to properly manage your assets and even plan for projects, especially larger projects or ones where you're talking about development coming in, making connections or synergies with the region for water main projects. I almost can't consider any of that, and I have to look at it year by year at that point. You're no longer forecasting for any potential increase in the future. It just becomes a very narrow scope. I personally would prefer to work backwards from 3% and cut things when I need to, than to possibly lose out on the opportunities of having some of these more efficient projects that we get a lot of kilometers of road done because it's a larger project, as opposed to saying, you know what, I'm going to do that in 3 separate blocks over 3 years. That's my concern with cutting it back.
We have a mover and a seconder for that amendment, that the roads, the 1% special roads levy be built into the 4-year plan. Any other questions or comments on that amendment? Councillor Brown?
Through you, Madam Mayor, just to be certain, we're not promising 3%. We're just building it into the budget. We're not telling people, yes, for sure, next year we're going to come at you with another 3% roads levy.
That's right. We're building it into the capital forecast, not the budget.
So we're working towards the future that way, and if we need to change it, we can change it.
Mm-hmm.
If we find out that we don't have the funding or something else goes wrong. But we're so just to be specific, we're not promising the taxpayers who are going to pay attention for sure on this one. We're not promising them that we're going to do that, but we're building it into the budget for the future.
The capital forecast, not the budget.
Should we be able to do so? Yeah.
Yeah, right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So we, Councillor Watton. Okay, so the amendment is there at a 1%, building it into, for the capital forecast. Any other questions or comments? Councillor Watton.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Just like to, and I know that the survey is only a small part of the whole thing, but I do believe that if I recall without pulling it up, that following the plan for the 3% for 10 years had the highest rate, did it not?
Through you, Madam Mayor, yes, it did.
Thank you.
Councillor McDougall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. This is difficult. I think we're all on the same page and we all want to see this rock to roll. I can understand the concern of managing expectations, but I can also understand trying to plan 3 and 4 years out as to what we might be able to do. I personally would like to see the difference split between the 1 and the 3 for the planning purposes, and then that gives Mr. Arsenal and staff some direction, but that's my opinion. I don't know how to make that amendment unless it's possibly, I don't know
If
if
this
that's
amendment fails, then you can make another amendment.
very good then. Thank you.
Okay, to that amendment, everybody understand it? 1% being built in for the capital forecast. All those in favor of the amendment? Okay, that amendment fails. Is there any further amendments? Councillor McDougall?
I'd like to make an amendment that we forecast 2% towards capital for the special roads levy.
Seconder? Councillor Kiesebrink? Comments, questions? Did you have anything that you would like to add, Mr. Arsenal?
Thank you, through you, Madam Mayor. Just to even elaborate on my last comments, some of the things that become challenging, this is going to happen regardless if we're fluctuating on our levy anyways, but planning for design, for EAs, that kind of thing, I have to prioritize those ahead of running into the year that I need to actually do the construction. We may end up with projects where we end up with a design and then it has to sit for 2 or 3 years because we adjust our levy. On the flip, if we stick at the 1%, obviously, I can't plan for those projects.
Okay, thank you. But 2% is better than 1.
Correct.
Yeah. No questions or comments on the amendment for a 2% built in for the capital forecast purposes in the next 4 years? All those in favor? 3. That amendment fails. Are there any further amendments? Councillor Kiesebrink.
The only other amendment to make, Madam Mayor, would be our CAO's request that we look for the target only to look at this point of the 3% over the next forecasted period, so that we can look at we can see what that looks like, what that possibility looks like.
And we can turn it down in future years. Were you making the amendment to 3%? Okay, do I have a seconder? Councillor Watton, questions or comments? Although, Councillor Brown?
Sorry, Your Worship, Madam Mayor, I'm just not sure what we're amending at this particular
Okay,
junction.
I'm sorry. Okay, so the amendment to the end of the original motion, okay, the original motion reads at a budget target of 1% plus a 3% special levy dedicated to roads and other infrastructure, 0.5 special levy for vehicles and equipment, and 0.5 special levy for building and facilities be approved, and that a now 3% special roads levy be built into the 4-year 2021 to 2024 capital forecast. Okay? So did we have a mover and a seconder? Councillor Keith, Councillor Watton. Any questions or comments on the 3% or built into the forecast? Councillor Keith.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I would just like to know what's possible based on the recommendations of the professionals that we hired for the roads needs study. They gave that as a solution for us to get the state of our roads repaired over, I think, what was the term?
25 years?
25 years. So they're saying that this is getting us out of, like right now, if we keep going the way we're going, everything will fail. Like we're behind now, so we have to do something. So I would just like to see what you can come up with for us. It would be exciting. I know that so many people just want hope. And I feel like if we could just give you that consistency to just look at what could that forecast look like, how much could we get done if we did this, that may be part of bringing hope to our constituents to say, this could look like this if we could do this and do it consistently and find a way to do it. Thank you.
And we vote on it every year. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions or comments? All those in favor of the amendment? 1, 2, 3, 4. That is carried. Thank you very much. So now to the original motion amended. Everybody clear on that now? The original motion amended. All those in, questions or comments? Oh, didn't we get one? Yeah, we got a mover and a seconder on that amendment? Yeah. The whole thing was Councillor Watton and Councillor Fiesebrink. So we have to have a new, okay, we have a new mover then, please, for the amended motion. Councillor Watton? Seconder? Oh, okay. The motion now reads that a budget target of 1% plus a 3% special levy dedicated to roads and other infrastructure, a 0.5 special levy dedicated to vehicles and equipment, and a 0.5% special levy dedicated to building facilities be approved, and that a 3% special roads levy be built into the 4-year 2021 to 2024 capital forecast. Everybody clear on the motion now? And the mover is Councillor Watton. Seconder was, did we get a seconder? Councillor Brown? All those in favor? Opposed? None? Okay, that is carried. Thank you very much. Whew.
Good.
Thank you. Thank you, staff. It was a very difficult debate for all of us. This is not fun. This is not fun, but it needs to be done. So the next item on the agenda is 9.3.1, and that is correspondence, and it's regarding Metrolinx. It is their form letter answer. Oh, I'm sorry, did I say that out loud? Their letter in answer in answer to our query. And Councillor McDougall, did you want to receive this for information with comments?
Yes, I'd love to receive this for
information.
Recycling with comments. I don't think it's funny at all.
No, it's not funny.
I don't believe it answers hardly any of our questions. I appreciate our DRT partners in doing the best that they can in this situation, but in no way is this a replacement for a GO Bus service that was funded through the province of Ontario through taxes collected in our tank. And those funds are not returned to our regional partners to bolster our service. And I have no doubt that those funds are not coming back to us in any way, shape, or form. And I would like to see them answer the motion I put forward. Thank you.
Yes, Councillor Kiesebrink?
Madam Mayor, could we possibly set up a meeting with our MPP and with them face-to-face to talk about it, as opposed to just getting an administrative letter response?
It's possible. It has been done, but it's possible to make that again. Yeah.
It was actually personally signed by Phil, though, so that's pretty good.
Do I have a seconder for receiving it for information? Councilor Kiesebrink. Any questions or comments? All those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. I pulled the last piece of correspondence, and I would ask that somebody make a motion to endorse it, and that is the correspondence from the region regarding joint and several liability consultation and providing a copy of the report as their submission to the Government of Ontario. Receive and endorse. Councillor Kiesebrink. Councillor Watton. All those in favor? Any questions or comments? All those in favor?
I was going to comment.
Sorry, did you have?
I was just going to comment.
Okay, go ahead.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I just wanted to say this is a long time coming, and it has been a huge issue for many municipalities, and I'm happy to see at least getting it to this point, and let's hope that
they deal with it.
Let's hope that it becomes forefront and it is taken care of, because it's been.
I don't know if everybody is familiar what this means, is that if there is an accident and we are sued and we have as low as 1% fault in that accident, we can have to pay the total damages. That's what joint and several liability means, and we have experienced that in this township. Yes, big time. Okay, so all those in favor? Okay, I think that was unanimous. Okay, thank you very much. That's approved. No notices of motion. No new business. Proclamations of the month of October. Received for information. Councillor Guido. Councillor Ross. Questions or comments? Guido and Ross. All those in favor? That's carried. Thank you. No closed session. May I have a motion to adjourn? Councillor Guido, Councillor McDougall, all those in favor? And that's carried. Thank you very much. It's a long and arduous meeting, so thank you very much, council and staff. Yeah, it was good, good debate.
Right thing.